Chapter 12:22. Xieze sighed and said, "The people here are so enthusiastic." Countless people lined the road to welcome them. Warm handkerchiefs, sachets and sachets fell like raindrops. Xieze was stunned and sighed with emotion. He was young, strong and had a strong recovery ability. His heavy injury was almost healed, and now he was full of vigor again. Although he was a surrendered general, Jiang Pingji didn't give him any special treatment. The other people didn't know which general was which. They would throw sachets and handkerchiefs to whoever was wearing powerful armor, who was good-looking, and who had an extraordinary temperament. Xieze relied on his beautiful face that was gifted by his parents to swindle a lot of sachets and colorful handkerchiefs. His popularity was not much lower than Li Yun's. Tut! This cruel world that was heartless and only cared about looks. Seeing that this group of young people was so impressive and popular, Yang Si felt sour in his heart. Thinking back to those years, he was also flushed with success and was the ideal husband in the hearts of countless beautiful ladies. Yang Si twirled his neatly trimmed beard and showed some sadness on his face. "Wenbin, do you think I'm really old?" He touched his face secretly. Felt good. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, it was full of collagen. Han Yu was riding on a horse and silently looked at the people who were welcoming them. Everyone's face was filled with enthusiasm, respect, and joy from the bottom of their hearts. It reminded him of when he was young, when the Emperor of Dongqing went out to worship the heavens, and the government runners forced the people to come out to cheer and kneel to welcome the Emperor. When he compared the memory of his youth with the scene in front of him, he could immediately tell which one was real. Before he could recover from his memories, a few yellow sachets were thrown at him in a daze. Looking in the direction of the flying traces, he saw a few pretty girls boldly expressing their love to him. Han Yu blushed. Yang Si happened to disturb him again, and Han Yu got rid of the awkward atmosphere. Han Yu said bluntly, "Do you think you are very young?" If Yang Si was a few years older, he would be old enough to be a grandfather. Men are 31 flowers. Of course I am young. Although Yang Si's age could be rounded up to 4, he looked like he was in his early 30s just by looking at his appearance. Han Yu glanced at Li Yun, Xieze and the other little fresh meats, who had received so many flowers that their hands were sore. He then looked at the old bacon Yang Si and smiled without saying a word. Yang Si, *******, it was one thing for Han Yu to crush the two armies, but now that they were on the same side, why was Han Yu still against him? Yang Si had an ominous premonition. Could it be that he wouldn't be able to turn things around in the future? The cheers of the people were like a tsunami. Han Yu looked at her back and tightened his grip on the reins. In a trance, he seemed to see the other party wearing a dragon robe, walking up the stairs step by step. Perhaps she was the final destination. Han Yu smiled faintly. He seemed to be influenced by the enthusiasm of the people around him, and his mood became more and more joyful. Feng Zhen, Feng Jin and the others had been waiting for a long time. Each of them craned their necks, waiting for the army to appear. He's here, my lord and the others are back." Seeing the commotion in the crowd from afar, the long-awaited army slowly appeared in sight. The second floor of the streets on both sides of the street was filled with onlookers. Most of them had only heard of Jiang Pingji's name, but they had never seen her in person. No matter how famous she was in the outside world, if they didn't see her with their own eyes, it would be unrealistic. Is the woman leading the army the Duke of Lanting? A certain scholar tried hard to control his manners. He couldn't be like those ordinary people who leaned against the window and stretched half of his body out, but he couldn't help but stretch his neck. After taking a look, he said, "She's indeed not an ordinary woman." Jiang Pingji was wearing the improved clothes for women. She looked crisp and elegant, and she would definitely become a fashion vane in Wanzhou. If she's an ordinary woman, what would Su Bei from Zhe County be? Another scholar said with a smile, "I thought the Duke of Lanting would be a strong and sturdy woman with dark skin like a boar. Looking at her now, it seems that although her appearance isn't stunning, it's not bad either." Many people had heard of Jiang Pingji's deeds. An image of a strong and sturdy man appeared in their minds. Who would have thought that she would be considered a beauty? "I heard that the Duke of Lanting hasn't gotten married yet. I wonder what kind of man would be able to catch her eye? It can't be you or me. That's strange. Why hasn't the Duke of Lanting gotten married yet? Her knees are so shabby that it makes people anxious." Yes, anxious. Wei Si's policy of public opinion was still useful. The school of novels had also flourished in the past few years. There were storytellers on the streets and alleys, in restaurants and tea houses. Every day people would bring small stools to listen to the stories. In the past few years, the territory under her rule was filled with brainless fans who sang praises of Jiang Pingji. Even though many scholars were quite critical of her identity as a woman, after staying in Wanzhou for a long time, they were unknowingly brainwashed. Before coming to Wanzhou, this was what they thought. She was just a woman. She could be glorious for a lifetime, but she would eventually marry, have children, and retire. After coming to Wanzhou, this was what they thought. Ah, how could my Duke of Lanting be so handsome, so beautiful, so wise, so powerful, so unparalleled in the world? They were frantically cheering for the Duke of Lanting. A new scholar who had just arrived opened his mouth. Maybe she has some unspeakable illness? Besides, which man would want such a rebellious woman? As soon as he finished speaking, he attracted a dozen unfriendly gazes from the tea-house. Someone retorted and mocked, "What a joke. A great hero like the Duke of Lanting should have carefully selected the best in the world. There are countless men and women in Wanzhou who are waiting for her favor. You are all frogs in a well. What you said just now is really hilarious." The new scholar's face turned green and white. He couldn't stay any longer, so he simply flicked his sleeves and left. When he went downstairs, he saw a few figures in blue and white holding onto the handrails as they went up to a private room on the second floor. Wow, so impressive. Sun Lan was wearing the blue and white school uniform of the Golden Scale Academy. She had 2 blue bags slung across her shoulders. There were a few books in the bags. According to normal times, they should still be in class at the Golden Scale Academy. However, the children wanted to see the world, so they begged their parents to apply for an hour's leave from the academy and came to watch the fun. Sun Lan and Qiguan Jinghui used both hands to lean against the window. They widened their eyes and carefully searched for their target. "Jinghui, that's Uncle Qiguan." Sun Lan's eyes were bright, and he immediately found his target. Qiguan Jinghui looked in the direction he was pointing, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "Daddy, Daddy," she called out in the direction of the crowd, but the cheers around her were too loud and completely drowned out her voice. Seeing this, Qiguan Jinghui pouted. Sun Lan raised a hand and patted her shoulder. "You'll see Uncle later. Jinghui, don't be disappointed or sad." Chapter 12:23. The child beside Jinghui is a student of the Golden Scale Academy, right? Which school is he from? Qiguan Rang waved his fan, his brows furrowed in displeasure. Wanzhou was liberal, but that didn't mean that other people's boys could touch their daughters. Most scholars in ancient times were short-sighted. It wasn't high, but it wasn't as good as a general's. Qiguan Rang could recognize Qiguan Jinghui, but he couldn't tell who the boy beside her was. Liyun glanced at him and said, "Master Sun's grandson is called Sun Lan." He still remembered that Sun Lan was an introverted and shy boy, but now he was much more outgoing. Sun Zidao's grandson? So it's him. When Jiang Pingji sent troops to Mengjian, Qiguan Rang was in charge of Chongzhou and assisted Sun when in governing Beizhou, Beijiang. He often heard Sun Wen talk about his grandson, so he had an impression of him. Liyun smiled and said, "The children have a good relationship." The parents' generation had a good relationship, so they naturally hoped that the next generation would get along well. If nothing unexpected happened, these children would be the cornerstone of the future. If they had a good relationship, it wouldn't be easy to have disagreements. Qiguan Rang snorted coldly and didn't comment. Liyun saw that he was unhappy, but he couldn't think of anything that had angered Qiguan Rang, so he could only keep his mouth shut. "Jinghui, your father is looking over here." Sun Lan saw Qiguan Rang looking over and waved his hands excitedly. Changxing glanced around and saw Liyun. She turned to the chubby girl in Shangguanwan's arms and said, "Nuanyuan, your father is over there." The chubby girl was Liyun's eldest daughter. She was named Li Nuan, and her nickname was Nuanyuan. She lived up to her name. She was always smiling and would laugh at whoever teased her. Her smile was warm and clean and she rarely cried. Changxing and the others liked her very much when they first saw her. Nuanyuan was at the age where she liked to babble. The first word she learned was father. Hearing the familiar pronunciation, she immediately turned to look at Changxing. She smiled, revealing her red gums and 2 or 3 white teeth. "Father." "Father?" Shangguanwan tapped the tip of Nuanyuan's nose with her finger and said, "Daddy will be able to see it when he comes back. The window isn't high, so it's not safe to approach it." Changxing's children were not tall, so they would be fine if they leaned against the window. However, it would be different if she carried Nuanyuan close to the window. Nuanyuan did not know what Shangguanwan was talking about. Instead, she opened her mouth and sucked on Shangguanwan's fingertip. The atmosphere in the private room was harmonious and relaxed, but the atmosphere outside was still high. "Master, Jiang Pingji got off the horse and threw the reins to the soldiers. Feng Jin and Feng Zhen, who had been waiting for a long time, went forward to welcome her. Qing Yuan was also there, but his cheeks were thinner than before and his chin was sharper. Thank you for your hard work. Jiang Pingji raised her hands and helped them up. It's not hard at all. It's part of my duty to share my lord's burden. It was not a place for them to chat and reminisce about the past. Jiang Pingji returned to the manor and sent people to disperse the people who had gathered together in an orderly manner. Because they were tired from the long journey, Jiang Pingji considerately asked everyone to go back to the manor and rest for a while. The rest of the matters could be discussed the next day. Han Yu and Xie Zhe were both newly surrendered. It was reasonable to say that they had no property in Wanzhou. However, Jiang Pingji had already sent people to bring their families to Wanzhou in advance. The manor and residences had already been prepared. Xie Zhe returned to the manor under the guidance of a servant. From afar, he saw his wife waiting at the gate with her servants. He was very excited. He had been mentally prepared to die on the battlefield and be separated by life and death. He had never thought that there would be a day when they would be reunited again. When a husband and wife met, they naturally had a lot to talk about. Compared to the harmonious and sweet relationship between the husband and wife, the other couple was a little cold. Han Yu and his wife were considered a young couple. They knew each other very well. He could tell at a glance whether his wife treated him sincerely or perfunctorily. Her husband had just escaped from death. Even if she didn't welcome him warmly, she should at least ask about his well-being. However, his wife didn't even bother to put on a show. Thinking about what Wei Ci had said earlier, Han Yu felt very upset. Does my wife resent your husband? Han Yu asked softly. Mrs. Han had a dignified demeanor. There was not a single flaw on her body. She was as perfect as an exquisite porcelain doll. I am more than happy that you have come back safely. Why would I resent you? Mrs. Han smiled and turned around to order the servant girls. She asked the servants to prepare hot water and clean clothes for Han Yu. At the same time, she asked the concubines from the backyard to come out and serve Han Yu. Han Yu didn't take any concubines after his marriage. However, he had 2 servant girls who served him before his marriage. Mrs. Han generously accepted them and even raised their status. Not only did she treat the concubines well, but she also took good care of the sons of the concubines. They were so perfect that there was no fault to be found. Seeing this, Han Yu could only sigh. My wife, why don't we have a talk? Han Yu said. Mrs. Han seemed to be surprised. She asked him in reply, talk about what? Han Yu choked and didn't know how to continue the conversation. He could see that his wife was dissatisfied and even resentful. However, she denied it, so he couldn't force her. Nothing. Master Yuanjing is here now. As his disciple, I should pay him a visit. Mrs. Han smiled. If that's the case, I will help you prepare. It's rude to come empty-handed. Han Yu could only stare at her. When Mrs. Han was about to walk out of the door, he said, although the Duke of Lanting is a woman, she is also an outstanding person. She is no worse than the Duke of Xinjiao. In Han Yu's eyes, Jiang Pingji was certainly no worse than Su Pei, but she still had to say what she had to say. Lang Jun is the head of the family. I'm just a woman from the backyard. Why are you telling me this? Mrs. Han maintained a perfect smile on her face, but she was unhappy in her heart. First, she was sent to Wanzhou as a captive. Although he didn't neglect or offend her, it still bothered her and made her feel bad. She thought that Han Yu would rather die than surrender. He might not imitate Ching Sun, but he wouldn't surrender to Lu Shi easily. She didn't expect that Han Yu would surrender to a new master so easily. Moreover, the new master was not close to the gentry but friendly to the poor. Han Yu's surrender to Lu Shi became a joke among the gentry in Ji County, which made her feel even more ashamed. That feeling turned into resentment, but she buried it deep in her heart and didn't want to talk about it with others. Han Yu really didn't have a good eye. That day, every household was not peaceful. Li Yun went home, hugged his daughter and kissed his wife. He was so happy that he looked like a fool. Before the banquet started, the gatekeeper outside the house announced that a guest had arrived. Who is it? The gatekeeper said, the guest claims to be from the Xie family. Li Yun suddenly remembered who it was and heard a clang. His father, Xie Qian, was so shocked that he dropped his chopsticks on the table. The Xie family? Xie Qian was surprised. Chapter 12:24. Xie Zhe solemnly asked his wife to prepare a generous gift and brought his family to visit. However, he came at a bad time. Li Yun's family had just finished their meal. It wasn't that Xie Zhe didn't understand etiquette, but Li Yun's family accommodated Shangguan Wan and their precious Li Nuan, who worked in the government office during mealtime. Xie told his wife about eldest uncle Xie Qian. His wife was also shocked. Although Xie Qian was from the previous generation, his position in the Xie family was special. After his accident, his courtyard in the Xie manor was sealed and no one had the right to live in it. It was a courtyard with excellent feng shui. When Xie's wife married, she asked about it out of curiosity and found out about Xie Qian. Langjun, is that really eldest uncle? Madame Xie sat by his side and waited. Her gentle black eyes carried a tinge of surprise. I heard from the old servant that first uncle had already. This is Commandant Li Yun's mansion. How could first uncle be here? Although Xie brought her to see Xie Qian and his respect warmed her heart, she was afraid that her husband would be deceived. Xie had just surrendered and needed to bide his time. Ever since Xie's wife arrived in Wanzhou, she had been living in the backyard and didn't dare to move around casually. She was afraid that she would accidentally anger the original nobles in Wanzhou. In the end, not only did she not help her husband, she even dragged him down. Xie raised his hand and patted the back of her hand to comfort her. I have confirmed that Hanmei's biological father is eldest uncle, Xie said. Although eldest uncle has been removed from the Xie family, his bloodline can't be severed. As juniors, we naturally have to take the initiative to visit. We can't forget basic etiquette in front of uncle. Xie comforted his wife, but his heart was beating like a drum. He was so nervous that his palms were sweating. His hearing was excellent and he acutely heard light footsteps approaching from afar. Martial artists all had the ability to lift their chi and lighten their bodies. Therefore, the higher their level of cultivation, the lighter their footsteps and the more stable their lower body. If it were an ordinary person, their footsteps would be heavy, loud, and deep. Xie had a vague guess and stared unblinkingly in the direction of the sound. Not long after, a scholarly man dressed in a dark green robe entered his line of sight. This person's appearance was somewhat similar to Li Yun's. However, Li Yun had been on expeditions all year round, so there was always a bloodthirsty and sharp aura around him, along with a hot-bloodedness that could not be ignored. This middle-aged man, however, was different. His elegant bearing gave people a favorable impression. His brows were gentle, and his facial features were even more refined and elegant. If it wasn't for his lower body being stable and breathing, Xie would have thought, eldest uncle? It's really eldest uncle. Xie was dumbfounded. It took him a while to recover and solemnly bowed. Seeing this, Xie's wife also bowed in respect. Xie Qian frowned at the young couple and got up to help them up. There are no outsiders here, there's no need to do this. Xie smile. Xie. Uncle. Xie smiled. This is the first time I've brought a relative to see you. I can't miss out on this gift. Even if they were a family, they couldn't be rude. Xie Qian said, I heard from Hanmei that you're second brother's fifth son? I haven't seen you for a few years and you've grown up. Xie said, eldest uncle, you can call me Yuangue. Yuangue? Xie Qian's expression froze. Your father gave you this name? Zhe. It had rules and a role model. It was a good name, but when read, it was such a coincidence. Yes, father gave it. He even said that it took him a long time to choose. If eldest uncle was still here with his literary talent, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Xie didn't realize what was wrong until he realized it. He asked Xie Qian anxiously, eldest uncle, is there something wrong with this name? Or did I accidentally offend someone's taboo? Xie Qian smiled. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the pronunciation is misleading. Xie didn't understand. Xie Qian didn't tease Xie. As soon as he saw Xie, he knew that he was a straightforward person like many of the Xies. Honest people were also innocent. It was better not to bully them. There's an object in the carpentry workshop called a compass. It's the word for circle and the word for regulation. It's used to make things and seems to be an indispensable tool in the carpentry workshop. I only heard about it recently and may have misunderstood it. I hope you won't hold it against me. With that, Xie understood. So his name and tool had been pronounced with the same pronunciation. He was a broad-minded person. There were many people in the world with the same name or character. It wasn't a big deal. Little did he know that Xie's character had made him the most famous general of this era. Students couldn't memorize famous people in history, but when compass was mentioned, they couldn't help but think of Xie. Xie said, if I can make uncle happy, it doesn't matter if I misunderstood. Xie Qian smiled gently at him. As expected of a direct descendant of the Xies, he always liked to play straight and didn't know how to beat around the bush. Although he had given up on returning to the clan, he couldn't remain indifferent when he met the Xies descendants many years later. He asked about his relatives with concern, and Xieze answered them one by one. Before Xie Qian could sigh, a meatball suddenly rolled in from outside. "Grandpa, Nuanyuan." Xie Qian, who had a granddaughter complex, was so scared that his voice changed. The servant who was serving Nuanyuan followed behind. Seeing her face down on the ground, she was scared out of her wits. Probably because she had more fat on her body, the fall didn't hurt. Nuanyuan propped herself up with her arms and shook her little head, as if trying to wake herself up. She refused the maid's help and slowly climbed up. Her body swayed like a plump penguin as she moved towards Xie Qian. Xie Qian was already in front of her. She stretched out her arms to hold his legs. After she steadied herself, she stretched out her right hand and opened her little claws. In her palm lay a very, very small pighead snack that she had squeezed until it was deformed. "Grandpa, eat." Nuanyuan wasn't fluent in speech. She only knew a few words. Although she was young, she had inherited her father's straightforward and generous personality. She loved to share with others. If she thought something was delicious, she liked to leave a portion to share with her mother or grandfather. As for Li Yun, after being away for so long, Nuanyuan, who was only a little over a year old at the time, had no impression of him. Her ability to call him daddy was taught well by her relatives and servants. Li Nuanyuan was good-looking. She looked a little like Li Yun and Shengguan Wan, but more like her grandmother Wang Huiyun. Chapter 12:25. All right, Grandpa, eat. Xie Qian didn't mind that the pastry pig had been squeezed out of shape and sucked the sweat from his palms. Instead, he ate it with a kind expression. Xieze asked curiously, "Is this cousin's daughter?" The Xie family had always had more males than females, with more males than females. Xieze's generation only had 2 sisters, the rest were just servants. In the Xie family, male children were abundant, while female children were rare. "Yes, her name is Li Nuan, her nickname is Nuanyuan." Xie Qian picked up the plump Nuanyuan. She was staring at Xieze with her black grape-like eyes, as if she was wondering when a strange uncle had come to her house. "Nuanyuan, call him uncle." Nuanyuan was a beat slower and mumbled the words, then giggled and buried her head in Xie Qian's neck as if she was shy. The cute little angel's call was like a sharp sword piercing through Xieze's chest, making his limbs go numb. He was touched by her cuteness. Cousin was indeed cousin, even his daughter was so outstanding. She was indeed a descendant of the Xie family. "Oh right?" Xieze didn't seem to have given up on the idea of having Li Yun acknowledge his ancestors. He couldn't move Li Yun, so he tried Xie Qian. After all, he was a descendant of the Xie family. How could he change his family name? If he changed his family name, it would be difficult for the Xie family to protect Li Yun in the future. Xie Qian had a change of heart. On the surface, he rejected Xieze's good intentions. It was better to let Li Yun continue to be a Li. Xieze couldn't even deal with Li Yun, let alone Xie Qian's thoughts. It was already good enough that he hadn't been led into a ditch. "Li Nuan, is this your name?" Xieze was surprised. Men often named themselves with a single character, using a double character as a base. Women used a double character, avoiding a single character. Of course, this was only for those who were particular about it. If the common people had a decent name, it would be great. Why would they be afraid of single and double characters? For example, Li Yun's childhood nickname was Li Gozhu. Not just Gozhu, but many people also named him Taidan, Shadan, Xuanzi, and the like. It was good enough to have a name that people could call. Why would they be particular about it? Xie Qian said, "The trend in Wanzhou has been like this in recent years. I'm afraid that Nuanyuan will also walk the path of a military general in the future. Taking a double name sounds too soft." Even though Xie Qian could not imagine the scene of Nuanyuan, who looked like his wife Wang Huiyun, wielding a knife and a gun, it was a family tradition, so he had to learn it. In the entire Xie clan, there was no need to talk about the male clansmen, as they had been beaten since they were young. The female clansmen also had to learn some martial arts. Nuanyuan's surname was Li, but she still had the blood of the Xie family flowing in her veins. Naturally, she could not abandon the family inheritance. Xieze thought of his lord's name, Lu Shi, and immediately understood who had started the trend of women taking single characters. Xieze's wife was shocked. She couldn't imagine what her uncle was thinking. He actually wanted Li Nuan to grow up and become a general to kill enemies. "Uncle, swords have no eyes on the battlefield, Nuanyuan," Xie Qian said. "Wanzhou has a complete system for female soldiers. If Nuanyuan wants to go to war, she'll probably start from the bottom. She won't face danger head-on. She had to train her courage first before killing the enemy to earn military merits." Although Xie Qian spoiled his granddaughter, he did not spoil her inappropriately. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Xie Qian had trained Li Nuan as the legitimate heir. None of the heirs of the Xie clan are useless. Although Nuanyuan is young, she is full of intelligence. It would be a pity if we don't teach her well. Nuanyuan didn't know what the adults were talking about. She only knew that they were all good-looking. She was well-behaved and entertained herself. Sometimes she pulled Xie Qian's sleeve, and sometimes she entertained herself. She giggled without crying or making a fuss. Which couple wouldn't like such a beautiful little angel? They liked her so much that they couldn't wait to give birth to a daughter who was as well-behaved and obedient as Nuanyuan. Compared to the harmony in the Li residence, Han Yu's situation was a bit awkward. He had wanted to take his wife to see Master Yuanjing. Han Yu had always respected Master Yuanjing as a father. Now that he was taking his wife to see Master Yuanjing, the meaning was obvious. He tried his best to ease the relationship between husband and wife, but Mrs. Han was stubborn and arrogant, so it didn't work. Mrs. Han politely declined Han Yu's proposal. Instead, she urged Han Yu to leave the house as soon as possible with the excuse that it was getting late. Paying a visit to someone's home was also very particular. The most basic etiquette was not to suddenly visit the host while the host was eating. Han Yu looked at the sky and decided to visit Master Yuanjing's house alone with a generous gift. Most of Jiang Pingji's people were gathered in one place. Although Master Yuanjing wasn't one of them, he was still assigned a house in a good location. Han Yu's house was only 2 streets away from Master Yuanjing's house, so it wouldn't take much time to get there. Han Yu's face darkened. Even if Mrs. Han didn't say it out loud, she was very thorough in her work. But Han Yu was her husband who shared the same bed with her. How could he not understand? Han Yu could see that Mrs. Han's attitude towards Master Yuanjing was distant and arrogant. That made Han Yu very angry. Master Yuanjing became famous because he defeated the northern borderline and took back the 3 cities. He became a famous man in the 5 kingdoms. As a result, the students who learned fast were slowed down, and the students who had a weak foundation could not keep up with the learning progress. Naturally, their learning efficiency was not high. The landowning households who had the resources could not go to the family school. They could directly invite the great scholars or famous scholars to come to their homes for one-on-one teaching. By doing so, the learning efficiency, quality, and progress were all guaranteed, but the educational resources were wasted. A master could have taught more students, but the resources were all enjoyed by one student who could not take care of others. Was that not a waste? That was the ineffective overflow of educational resources. The booklet written by Master Yuanjing was called an essay, but it was more like a brand new, well-organized system. The teaching resources and the students were balanced as much as possible to ensure the learning efficiency, quality, and progress of the students while benefiting more students. Han Yu flipped through the booklet. Following the content, he witnessed the system of the Golden Scale Academy from scratch, and it was gradually perfected and reasonable. Master Yuanjing did not rely on his imagination or his idealized imagination to perfect this system. Instead, he focused on the actual situation. Seeing Master Yuanjing's steady layout and planning, Han Yu felt even more ashamed of his frivolous and naive pursuit of Tao. If Jiang Pingji hadn't woken him up, he would have been stuck in a dead end. Master, you are indeed a genius in the world. I am ashamed of my inferiority. Master Yuanjing said seriously, the Golden Scale Academy from scratch is the result of the painstaking efforts of me and a few other great scholars. It is not something that can be accomplished by one person. Without the support of the Lord of Lanting and the efforts of those children, this system would not be as fruitful as it is today. Master Yuanjing's contribution was great, but it was not the greatest, and it was not his contribution alone. Han Yu knew that he had made a slip of the tongue, so he immediately apologized solemnly. Master, do you think highly of the Lord? Han Yu noticed that Master Yuanjing addressed Jiang Pingji respectfully. Although Lu Zhao was the son of a concubine, his real identity was the legitimate son of Gu Min and Lu Shi. Master Yuanjing faked a smile and said, "Why are you visiting me so late at night?" For a moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and he looked at Lu Zhao with a measuring and scrutinizing gaze. As smart as he was, he could not think of the reason why Lu Zhao would look for him in the middle of the night. He was even more unwilling to think of a conspiracy theory. "It is," Master Lu said. "He, Master Yuanjing." "Master." Lu Zhao's expression was serious and his eyes were bright. There wasn't the slightest bit of frivolity in them. He said, "This matter is of great importance. I hope that you won't deny it." Master Yuanjing said, "Tell me. For the sake of your mother, I will do my best to help you." He didn't say anything. If Lu Zhao wanted to seize power, he wouldn't help him. If it was something else, of course, anything that Gu Min's family got involved with was not a small matter. Lu Zhao said, "Master, do you know that Lu Shi is not the real Lu Shi?" Master Yuanjing said calmly, "I know. But so what? Do you want me to get rid of her?" She was quite capable. Monk Liaochen could see it. Of course he could see that Jiang Pingji was extraordinary. Although reincarnating in another person's body was quite scary, it was nothing to a fraud of his level. Wei Xi's attitude and reaction were the key to his trust in Jiang Pingji. He still remembered the first time he met Gu Min and the world she described. But only Lu Shi could create such a magnificent and beautiful world. No, it should be said that he had replaced Lu Shi as an otherworldly person. If Lu Zhao wanted to go against Lu Shi, Master Yuanjing wouldn't help him, even if he was the son of an old friend. Lu Zhao shook his head and said in a low voice, "I've never had such a thought. She's my sister and I really treat her as my sister. According to my dead mother, she's related to the fate of the world. She can't be touched. But I know who wants to touch her." Master Yuanjing was surprised. "Then why did you come today?" "It's very important to me to touch my sister's people," Lu Zhao said. "I suspect that my father, Lu Shi, has been possessed by a villain. He's plotting something big. My real sister, Lu Shi, is missing. I'm here today to ask if there's a plan that satisfies both sides." Lu Zhao was greedy. He wanted to protect everyone. Master Yuanjing's face darkened. He looked at Lu Zhao with a complicated gaze. Lu Zhao looked like Gu Min. His personality was similar. The world is the game and the people are the pawns. You and I are pawns, but the person playing the game is the general. "It's better if you don't get involved," Master Yuanjing said solemnly. Mr. Yuanjing said solemnly, "You saw what happened to the last person who tried to turn things around." Lu Zhao's body trembled. His eyes widened. Master Yuanjing heaved a long sigh. He could not help but reminisce. The world was the game and the people were the pawns. How God cared for the people. It allowed an otherworldly person to support the dark world and lead everything in the best direction. How cruel and heartless it was. It generously helped the people, but it was stingy and ignored a mother's smallest wish. "Chunin, I beg you to think of a way. Can't you have the best of both worlds?" The beautiful woman held the baby girl in her arms and cried to him. Her bloodshot eyes were swollen and full of despair. "I can't have my cake and eat it too. There's nothing I can do." As soon as Master Yuanjing said that, the woman cried uncontrollably. Knowing that there was a complete soul in her daughter's body, the woman's first reaction was not to be ecstatic. Instead, she was anxious and on the verge of losing control of her emotions. She knew that her daughter had dementia and no soul. In the future, this body would welcome a powerful soul and obtain a new life in the truest sense. What was the result? Her daughter was born with a complete soul. This meant that this daughter was a new life, and she was Gu Min's daughter. How could she accept that after she raised her daughter for 12 years, her body was occupied by another destined soul? That was her daughter. If she did not do that, the Jiang dynasty that should have been established would no longer exist, and the chaotic world that should have ended early would have continued. If the chaotic world continued, there would be countless lonely souls and wild ghosts. Even if the world was divided and united, the dynasty that was established was not the Jiang dynasty. Even if history would slowly develop, how long would it take to truly enter the developed modern era? 500 years or 1,000 years? The Jiang dynasty only used 300 years. When the Jiang dynasty stood at the top of the world, other places were still backward and barren. There were endless wars and the people were ignorant and ridiculous. If the butterfly had the Jiang dynasty, there would be many more innocent souls. Lu Zhao stood up with weak legs. He glanced at the war god sword, afraid that the blade would kiss his neck in the next second. Lu Zhao walked 2 steps behind her like a little wife. He lowered his head and looked up from time to time to see Jiang Pingji's back. "That, sister. I didn't mean anything bad by looking for Master Yuanjing," Jiang Pingji snorted. "I know. If you dare to reveal any of your ambitions, Master Yuanjing will look for me." Although Master Yuanjing did not make a clear statement, he was indeed on Jiang Pingji's side. Because in this world, only Jiang Pingji could help Master Yuanjing practice his way. Lu Zhao could not do it. If Lu Zhao was really ambitious, he would not be able to come up with a more valuable bargaining chip. He would not be able to persuade Master Yuanjing to change sides. He would even expose himself. Jiang Pingji also believed that Lu Zhao would not do such a stupid thing. "Sister." Lu Zhao remembered what Master Yuanjing and his late mother Gu Min said. He took a deep breath and asked, "I want to ask a favor of you." Jiang Pingji smiled. I refuse. Ha! Lu Zhao choked. What? Sister, you haven't heard me out. I'm easy to talk to. As long as my life, dignity and principles are not violated, everything is negotiable. Otherwise there's nothing to talk about. Lu Zhao shut his mouth. He looked a little embarrassed. Jiang Pingji pressed her hand on his head and smiled. Why are you so depressed? Come, smile for me. Lu Zhao forced a smile that was uglier than crying. Don't think too much. Maybe the thing you want is not as bad as you think. I don't have the energy to work overtime and stay up late alone. Jiang Pingji first put the basket on the ground, then flipped over and leaped into Wei Xi's room through the window. She then turned around and carried the basket in. I saw that your walking posture was strange. What's wrong with you? Jiang Pingji talked on, not giving Wei Xi any room to react. I'm fine. Wei Xi sighed softly and limped into the room. He raised his hand and closed the window. What was it like to have a master with superb martial arts skills? Wei Xi felt that she would appear in front of him at any time, any place, and under any circumstances. She could stimulate him at any time and any place. Jiang Pingji carried the basket and looked down at Wei Xi's feet. Only then did she realize that there was a lump of black hanging on one of his legs. Ying? It seemed to have noticed Jiang Pingji's line of sight. The lump of shadow turned its large face and stared at her with its black pearl-like watery eyes. It made two sounds from its mouth. It used its claws to hug Wei Xi's thigh and calf, putting the weight of its entire body on this leg. It was probably a little heavy. Wei Xi could only rely on shifting when he walked, so his walking posture was a little limping. Jiang Pingji said, You haven't fed it to death yet? She had not bothered with it since she threw it to Wei Xi. She thought that it had long been stolen and roasted by some greedy soldier. Wei Xi said, This is the young master appointed by the Lord. How would I dare to neglect it? It was Jiang Pingji's turn to be dumbfounded. When did she appoint a panda as the young master? They yawned from time to time as if they lacked sleep and overused their kidneys. Qiguan Rang also had heavy dark circles under his eyes, but he held a fan to cover half of his face when he wanted to yawn. Feng Jin and Su Ku were also complaining incessantly. As the members who stayed behind to guard the rear, their tasks were not light. Not only did they have to maintain the supply of logistics on the battlefield, but they also had to take care of the development and construction of the various territories. Everything was finally on the right track, but when the Lord came back, they were buried alive by government affairs. Speaking of which, couldn't the Lord spend the new year outside? Why did she have to come back? Su Ku's eyes were filled with silence. He had been with the Lord for almost 10 years. Since the earthquake in Dongqing, he had never enjoyed the taste of annual leave. Everyone else was having a reunion and eating their New Year's Eve dinner. He could only quickly eat 2 mouthfuls of rice and continue to be busy. What a hole. There was no such thing as an annual leave. Han Yu, who did not know what was going on, rubbed his palms together. Xie and Qin Gong were also eager to try. The other feudal lords chose spring and autumn to train their troops, but Jiang Pingji was different. Most of the training was concentrated in winter and summer. In winter and summer there was no rest in the military camp. The training would also enter a high-intensity state. Xie and Qin Gong, the 2 newly surrendered generals, could take the opportunity to learn more about the unfamiliar military camp system. It would be convenient for them to lead the troops in the future. Qin Gong would lead the troops to Zhe County after the new year in Wanzhou. They would be stationed there for long-term training. According to the current situation, when Jiang Pingji attacked Huangsong, she would have to transfer the troops from Zhe County and Hu County. Qin Gong had a heavy task. He had to put in more effort to prepare. As the New Year's Eve approached, the atmosphere in Wanzhou and other places gradually became more festive. Red lanterns were hung in front of every house. The lively atmosphere warmed the whole winter day. The students of the Golden Scale Academy wore blue and white uniforms with bright red warm coats over their heads. Their little faces were red from the cold wind. Father, why are you here? Chapter 1231. Feng Yi looked at his father calmly. His expression was slightly embarrassed, as if he was hesitating about something important. Father, I only asked for 15 minutes of leave from the headmaster. If you have something to say, please say it quickly to avoid any delays. Addicted to learning, unable to extricate himself. A life without learning was a waste. Feng Yi didn't like to waste precious time on meaningless things. Feng Jin said, Isn't the academy going to have its annual vacation? As far as I know, there's nothing for you to learn these days. Feng Yi lifted his eyelids slightly, his tone as calm as ever. Reviewing the old to learn the new, I want to take advantage of this annual vacation to consolidate the knowledge I have learned this year. Only by stabilizing my foundation can I improve further. Feng Yi said, also, I secretly borrowed the textbooks for next year from the headmaster. The knowledge in the books is difficult and I need to spend a lot of energy to read them. Father, if there's nothing important, I'll take my leave first. There's still time to discuss unimportant matters after school. Feng Zhen was speechless. Everything that should and shouldn't be said had been said by this kid. Once again he doubted whether Feng Yi was his own son. How was this serious look like him at all? Feng Zhen didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt like his authority as the head of the family was being greatly challenged. Seeing that Feng Yi was about to get up and leave after bowing, Feng Zhen quickly reached out and grabbed Feng Yi's arm. There really is something. This matter concerns my marriage. Do you think it's important? Feng Yi lifted his eyelids, his eyes filled with one sentence. After holding it in for so long just to say a few useless words? Feng Yi said, Father, you're in the prime of your life, but your backyard is empty. I think we should find a family and add a mistress. Feng Zhen already knew that his son was on the same page as him, but he was still worried because he didn't hear it with his own ears. Feng Yi was his only child for many years. He was stubborn and different from other youths his age. This child had his own ideas and Feng Zhen had high hopes for him. Feng Zhen didn't want to raise his child into a yes man, and he didn't want Feng Yi to be his subordinate. He wanted to know Feng Yi's attitude on some important family matters. But, knowing was one thing, but his son was so understanding that he was so touched that he almost cried. As expected of his biological son, he knew how to dote on his father. After Feng Yi finished speaking, she turned around again. Feng Zhen hurriedly pulled her back. Aren't you going to ask who it is? The 3 letters and 6 rights should be discussed in detail. I don't have an elder by my side, so I can only discuss it with you. In another 2 years, Feng Yi would reach the age of marriage and could be considered half an adult. Feng Yi asked, is this father's idea or concubine Xiao's? Feng Zhen was stunned for a moment. He, who had always been shameless, was suddenly exposed by his own son. He blushed with embarrassment. How did you know it was Xiao Nyangzi? Feng Zhen asked. Feng Yi replied, Father's hobby is very unique. How come I don't even know this? No matter the age of men, they all seem to like fresh and tender women. Only her father's taste was unique. There were thousands of beauties in the world, but he only loved mature and beautiful mature women. This was probably a form of devotion. Ever since Wan Xiu'er moved into the manor, Feng Zhen's private life had become a lot more restrained. Since he was busy with work, he didn't have much fun. In Feng Zhen's own words, there was a guest of the opposite sex living in his manor. As the host, he couldn't be too unrestrained and ruin the other person's reputation. His excuse was dignified, but Feng Yi didn't believe a word of it. If Feng Zhen really didn't like it, he wouldn't have written a letter to Feng Yi asking him to take care of Wan Xiu'er. Feng Yi took the opportunity to let Wan Xiu'er stay in the manor's guest courtyard. Wasn't it also because of Feng Zhen's hint? Therefore, Feng Yi wasn't surprised that Wan Xiu'er would become the next mistress of the Feng manor. If there was a surprise, it would probably be that Feng Zhen had been well behaved for more than a year and didn't overstep his boundaries with Wan Xiu'er. The story of Feng Zhen and Wan Xiu'er was like a rat guarding a rice jar. In the end, it grew to love the white rice in the jar. Feng Zhen's face was burning after his son mercilessly exposed him. He said, this was my idea. Xiao Nyangzi agreed, but she felt that she needed to ask for your opinion. If that's the case, pick an auspicious day after the new year and get this done, Feng Yi said naturally. Time is a bit tight, so Lady Xiao will have to suffer. I will go back to the manor after school to check the storeroom. The 3 scholarly documents and 6 rituals must be complete. Feng Zhen was speechless. Was this a son or an ancestor? I have observed Lady Xiao for a long time. She has a good temperament. There is no need to worry that anything will go wrong in handing the manor over to her, Feng Yi said. Marriage is a big deal. Neither party can be wronged. Since Lady Xiao and father have the intention to marry, father should respect her. Before the wedding, let Lady Xiao move out of the guest courtyard and choose a house outside as her maiden home. If Mistress Xiao were to marry out of the mansion and then marry back into the mansion, it would be somewhat improper for outsiders to see. I heard that Mistress Xiao and the Duke of Lanting used to be from the same hometown. Father also has some face in front of the Duke of Lanting. It would be better to ask for a favor and let the Duke of Lanting act as a matchmaker. Feng Zhen was speechless. Feng Yi asked again, Lady Xiao's status is special and she is remarried. I'm afraid her dowry will not be enough. Father, do you want to add some privately? After all, there was the step of showing the dowry to the bride. This was related to the bride's pride. The dowry of noble ladies was accumulated from birth. Wan Xiuer's background was not weak, so her dowry was naturally rich. However, Wan Xiuer followed her ex-husband to guard Hanchang Pass. Most of her dowry was lost in the chaos of war. She later found some, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. Even if it was a second marriage, she had to have what she needed. Outsiders could not laugh at the bride. Feng Zhen's mouth twitched a few times. He couldn't force out a word. He just had to sit down and listen to his son's arrangements. Feng Yi thought for a while and felt that there were still many things that had not been arranged. According to normal procedures, the couple had to prepare for marriage for a year or half a year. However, this was a special time. There would be a war after the beginning of spring or the autumn harvest. It was impossible to prepare slowly. Of course, I have to add, Feng Zhen's net worth was not small. After all, Jiang Pingji was not a stingy lord. Every time there was a great victory, she would plunder the enemy's property. She would always give away some money. In addition, there were many profitable businesses in Feng Zhen's manor. After a few years of accumulation, not only had they made up for their previous losses, but they had also accumulated a large sum of money. It would not be a problem to make a decent dowry. Feng Zhen said, however, there is no need to go through the public accounts. Just take it from my private treasury. Feng Yi was the eldest son of the legal wife. The majority of the family property must be left to him. He could not let his son suffer just to marry a wife. Chapter 1232. Feng Zhen thought his joke was humorous, but his son gave him a cold stare. Father, be careful with your words. Changxing is still young. What does she know? Feng Zhen muttered, you speak as if you know a lot. Do you want me to take you to broaden your horizons? His son had already had a dream leak. There was no harm in knowing some things in advance. If the boy had a dream leak, it meant that he would have the ability to carry on the family line. Jokes aside, Feng Zhen knew that his son had been weak since young. If he really wanted to marry and have children, he would have to wait until he was 20 years old. Feng Yi said, Father? Feng Zhen replied, what? 15 minutes are up. I will take my leave first. We will discuss other matters in detail when we return to the manor. With that, Feng Yi stood up and left, leaving Feng Zhen with a cool and indifferent back. Feng Zhen was speechless. Asterisk, 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 this is definitely not my own son. Feng Yi walked back to the classroom with light steps. His expression was still calm, and one could faintly see his future glory. He walked through the long corridor. The short pine trees planted in the academy were covered with a layer of snow. A few figures in blue and white school uniforms sat or leaned against the rockery, benches and long tables. They held books made of bamboo slips or bamboo paper in their hands. The crisp sound of reading floated into his ears. Every time he saw such a scene, Feng Yi's mood would jump, as if his body was light. He pushed open the paper door of the classroom, bent over and changed into clean socks and wooden clogs. He walked to his seat and sat down. Not long after he sat down, a figure also sneaked into the classroom. Why is Uncle Feng looking for you? Changxing opened her textbook to cover her face. On the surface she sat upright, but she was secretly whispering to Feng Yi. Father and Lady Xiu's wedding is near, Feng Yi replied. Changxing pouted and asked, is it near? Feng Yi said, when they get married, Lady Xiu will be the mistress. I will call her mother. Changxing was about half a size younger than Feng Yi. No matter how smart and sensible she was, there were many things that she could not understand. But she is not your mother. Is there another mother? Feng Yi said, yes, but father is more important. Changxing blinked, her eyes filled with confusion. Feng Yi said, my mother passed away many years ago and my father isn't that old either. When I get married at a young age, don't tell me I'm going to leave my father alone at home. While he was still young, he should find someone to accompany him as soon as possible so that he wouldn't have anyone to take care of him in his later years. No matter how considerate their children are, they still have another family to take care of, and they are not as considerate as their wives. Now that father has settled down, I can also put one of my worries to rest. Changxing was confused. He already had a mother, yet he had to find another woman to be his mother. Did he really feel good about it? She tried to imagine. If her father brought a strange woman to be her mother, she would definitely be very sad. Feng Yi saw through her thoughts. The person who will accompany me for a long time in the future will not be my father. Similarly, the person who will accompany my father will not be me. Changxing's face was bitter, her baby fat snow-white skin was flushed. Feng Yi couldn't help but poke him and a small part of his chubby face sunk in. He said, "You'll understand when you're older." Changxing said in distress, "Sai, I don't want to understand. Brother Feng Yi can help me understand." Feng Yi said, "Okay." School ended on time. Feng Yi first sent Changxing, Sun Lan, and Qiguan Jinghui back to their respective mansions. Fortunately, the mansions were very close to each other, and the furthest was only a street away. He returned home before sunset. After returning to the mansion, Feng Yi summoned the butler to discuss his father's marriage. However, these days I don't seem to see any interaction between the two of them. Why did father suddenly? The butler's face twitched. He didn't know if he should tell his little Langjun about the things of the adult world. Feng Yi saw the clues and asked, "Could it be that something happened?" The butler said, 2 days ago, Duke Lanting bestowed a fruit wine that was newly buried the year before last. Master has been interested in that madam for a long time, so he used this to invite Madame Wan to admire the snow. His original intention was to get closer and talk about family matters. Unexpectedly, the wine was not like ordinary rice wine or sake. It was strong and spicy and had a strong aftereffect. Master boasted that he would not get drunk even after drinking 1,000 cups. He didn't control himself at all, and accidentally drank a little too much. For ordinary sake or rice wine, anyone with a bit of alcohol tolerance would be able to drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. Although it was called wine, its alcohol content was only slightly higher than plain water. Even a woman who didn't drink could drink 1 or 2 pots. The two careless ones thought it was ordinary wine. The moon was clear and the snow was alluring. The two of them were tipsy and there was only a thin paper window between them. Taking advantage of the situation, they rolled together. Although it was a bit unexpected, there was no such thing as integrity in times of war. The two of them were unmarried, so it was normal for them to drive together. Wan Xiu wanted to keep this a secret, but Feng Zhen took this opportunity to bring up marriage. Wan Xiu was a widowed woman with no relatives or elders by her side, so she could decide her own marriage. Feng Zhen, on the other hand, had a son who was almost grown up. If he wanted to remarry, he had to ask for Feng Yi's opinion. After hearing this, Feng Yi's expression darkened. Ridiculous. Entering the bedroom of the opposite sex before marriage, and doing such a thing that tarnished her reputation, her father was really stupid. The butler was silent, as if he didn't hear Feng Yi scolding his father for being ridiculous. Even if Feng Zhen didn't do well, Feng Yi shouldn't belittle him in this way based on the current situation. After calming down, Feng Yi asked the butler to get Feng Zhen's private account book and the official account book. Marry her as soon as possible or else it would be bad if someone died. The butler wasn't worried about this. Master only had a little husband after many years of marriage. Because Feng Zhen was born with a weak constitution, it affected Feng Yi. Not to mention that Feng Zhen had been taking hanshi powder for a while. Although he quit and took good care of his body for a few years, it still affected him. Soul imprint? No way. She heard that Madame Wan had some problems with her body too. The chances of these two killing someone were not high. Feng Yi said, "You can't guarantee that you won't have it? A son knows his father best." Based on Feng Zhen's temper, he might do something ridiculous like sleeping in a lady's room when he finally had sex. If he didn't do it once, a few more times might do it. The butler was speechless. What the little husband said made sense. The Golden Scale Academy's annual break was about to begin. Feng Yi had a lot of time every day to prepare for his father and stepmother's marriage. He was so busy that he didn't even have time to rest, making the two people involved seem useless. Wan Xiu wasn't as thick-skinned as Feng Zhen, so she was a little embarrassed. Feng Zhen said, "Don't worry, let him practice now so that he can marry Feng Huayu's daughter in the future. I don't have to worry about him." Wan Xiu was speechless. Feng Zhen puffed out his chest proudly and said, "Who asked me to have such an intelligent and capable son? A son should be like this." Yang Si. He had already been showered with dog food by Feng Zhen, and now he was showing off his son. Couldn't he show some sympathy for an older single man? Feng Zhen cheekily picked his teeth with a toothpick and said, "You are all alone, how can you understand the beauty of having a virtuous wife and a filial son?" Yang Si immediately revealed an expression of disgust. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's time to let that Madame Wan see your virtue. How could Feng Zhen have the cheek to do such a vulgar act in front of outsiders?" Feng Zhen said, "In the future when it's fun in the bedroom you'll naturally see it. Jing Rong, you don't understand the joys of a married couple. Yang Si, that's damned enough." Having successfully disgusted Yang Si, Feng Zhen hummed a little tune. He reclined on a small couch, his outer robe slipping down to his shoulders, revealing a green Confucian robe. His hair scarf was loose and his black hair draped over his shoulders. He propped himself up on the couch with one hand and reached for a steaming cup of wine with the other. He took a sip. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew in from outside the window. The cold wind carried fine white snow, drifting to the top of his head and strands of hair. Auspicious snow indicates a bumper harvest. Next year will definitely be a bumper harvest, he murmured and sighed. Outside, the festive atmosphere was strong. Commoners wearing thick new winter clothes could be seen on the streets and alleys. After a few years of construction, the entire Xiangyang district had become the commercial center of Wanzhou. There was an endless stream of merchants coming and going from all over the place. The buildings in Xiangyang district were also gradually renovated and remodeled, from the original low and dilapidated wooden houses and stone houses to green-tiled wooden houses. The streets, big and small, were paved with clean and tidy stone or green bricks, wide and clean. Because of the repeated expansions and modifications of the city, the original city gate was changed to an inner city gate. Later, a gate and 2 city gates were built. In terms of prosperity, the current Xiangyang district was not inferior to the former Shangjing. The former was better than the latter. The population had expanded from the original 20,000 to 30,000 to more than 300,000. As the end of the year approached, the market was already a sea of red. The merchants and vendors on both sides of the street were enthusiastically promoting their goods. It had been snowing heavily in the past few days. The district headquarters had issued an order for all the commoners to sweep away the snow to prevent the houses from collapsing. The commoners had been maintaining this order for several years and had long gotten used to it. Chapter 1234. You're here, Master Yang? Huijun had always been concerned about Jiang Pingji's affairs. How could she not find out more about the talent she valued? She immediately asked the servant to lead Yang Si into the main hall and treat him as a VIP. Fu Wang, the wild wolf, felt jealous when he saw it. He carried a cub in each hand and strode to the main hall with strong steps, looking like the alpha wolf announcing his territory. Yang Si was speechless. He was just celebrating the new year. Who did he offend? Did they take turns to feed him dog food? Fu Wang, an uncouth man, could openly squat in the house of the imperial beauty. Would the heavens open their eyes? Yang Si roared in his heart, but he looked very calm on the surface. He said, I didn't expect this to be Lady Hui's house. Please forgive me for my sudden visit. Yang Si knew Huijun. After all, she was an unforgettable beauty, but they didn't have much contact. Ever since they left Huangshui, Huijun had concealed her identity as the Empress of Zhongzhou and changed her appearance to become a servant girl of Jiang Pingji's hometown. Later she was released to open her own house. Yang Si vaguely heard that this young lady had been in contact with Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang of the Mo family in the carpentry workshop. It seemed that they wanted to combine the pedal-powered spinning wheel with the water-powered spinning wheel. It seemed that there was already good news about this. Even though he didn't know the details, Yang Si felt that the woman in front of him was not simple. Huijun smiled faintly and said, What are you talking about, Master Yang? It's my honor to have you visit my house. Fu Wang, who was carrying the 2 cubs, coughed heavily. Huijun rolled her eyes at him. It was clearly an unpleasant action, but she looked extremely flirtatious when she did it. There are still maids sweeping the snow on the roof outside. I'll go and keep an eye on them. Take your time. Yang Si looked at Huijun's back as she left, then at Fu Wang, who was carrying the cubs and frowning. He secretly felt a toothache. If he really couldn't see the clues, he would have wasted so many years in the brothel. These 2 children. Could they be Lady Hui and General Fu's? Fu Wang nodded and admitted it without hesitation. The more he looked at the twins in his arms, the more he liked them. Especially his daughter, that charming appearance was carved from the same mold as her mother. Not only did he like her, but his neighbor, Old Man Xieqian, also liked her. Come to think of it, it was strange that Old Man Xieqian's granddaughter, Lin Wan, looked a little like his own daughter. If not for their different sizes, they would look more like twins. Fu Wang asked around and found out that Huijun looked very similar to Lin Wan's grandmother when she was young. It was really fate. Chapter 1235. According to the tradition of previous years, Jiang Pingji would hold a New Year's banquet on New Year's Day. She would invite the civil and military officials under her command to have a meal together and exchange feelings. Back then there were only 2 or 3 people in her camp. The New Year's banquet was just a simple gathering to eat barbecued meat and warm a cauldron. Now that the family business had expanded, Jiang Pingji's subordinates had also increased by quite a lot. Apart from the mainstays in the past 2 years, many middle-level talents had been selected from the Golden Scale Pavilion. Jiang Pingji naturally wanted them to attend an event like the New Year's banquet to broaden their horizons. With more people, the venue naturally had to keep up with the times and increase the area. To ensure that the New Year's banquet went smoothly, Jiang Pingji arranged seats according to the status of the guests. The mainstay could drink with her, while the slightly less talented people ate separately in the side halls. Jiang Pingji originally wanted to continue the fine tradition of the officials producing their own programs, but this suggestion was rejected by the audience in the streaming room. Lao Ciji Lianming, although self-produced programs can increase the officials' participation, it's not good to do this every year. Those who have been with you for a long time know your temperament, but those middle management staff don't. If you force yourself to do so, it will easily damage your reputation. Gui Kai Guo Feng Xiao, in my opinion, it's better to have a classification system. If an important official can drink with you, it means that their relationship with you is closer, so there is no need to be too rigid about etiquette. Since they were all on the same side, it was fine to let them perform on their own. You don't have to specially arrange singers and dancers for those who are arranged for the banquet. It's better to choose folk artists. This way it'll be more approachable to the people. Jiang Pingji did not like spending money on singers and dancers. Such an extravagant and depraved life did not suit her style. If she had to make an exception for a group of middle-level personnel, she would not feel comfortable. The audience in the livestream room brainstormed and came up with a compromise for her. Not only could it make the subordinates more friendly to the common people, but it could also clearly distinguish their status and stimulate their fighting spirit. A lord who was kind to her subordinates was not a good lord. While being kind to her subordinates, she also had to let them understand the difference in status and intimacy. Jiang Pingji had the same idea. The suggestion from the audience in the streaming room was exactly what she wanted. If that's the case, then let the theater choose a few plays that are lively, festive and friendly to the people. Jiang Pingji added, it'd be best if it's a new show. The power of Wanzhou flourished, and the entertainment industry prospered along with the growth of the economy and population. With Jiang Pingji's permission, Wei Ci vigorously developed novelists and related industries, using entertainment methods to control public opinion. After several years of implementation, the results were remarkable. The people of Wanzhou had been ravaged by Wei Ci's great method of brainwashing through public opinion, and they had long regarded her as a god. Didn't you see that countless men and women yearned for Jiang Pingji's favor day and night? As the leader in this field, Wei Ci had to take on this task. If not for the fact that Wei Ci was an ancient person, the audience would have suspected that he was a time traveler. This kind of method was not rare in the current era of the livestream viewers, but in an ancient era where entertainment was scarce, it was terrifying. However, Wei Ci had struggled for so many years, and the entertainment industry was still thriving because of him. After a few years, not only did Jiang Pingji not have to pay for it, but Wei Ci also earned a large sum of money for Jiang Pingji's private treasury every year. In the past, no one would waste effort in this aspect, so Wei Ci's torment did not cause suspicion. Or rather, they did not think that the entertainers on the streets, the storytellers in the tea houses and taverns, a group of lowly people, could influence public opinion. They did not even dare to think about it. They disdained to deal with entertainers and despised this group of people. Naturally, they did not think that they were potentially terrifying. The previous means of public opinion was at most to make up a ballad and spread it through the mouths of hooligans, ruffians, and children. Wei Ci's organized and disciplined method of criticism was a magnificent feat that had never been done before. Wei Ci said, if it's a new play, it's better to let everyone watch it together so as to avoid favoritism. Jiang Pingji thought about it, nodded and responded, what you said makes sense. Pass down the instructions to let the theater prepare for the new play. The entertainment industry was gradually taking shape, and many other industries were spawned. Seeing this, Wei Ci simply introduced the official theater troupe. What was a theater troupe? It was equivalent to the pear garden that the audience was familiar with, and its form was similar to actors. The entertainers acted with the novel scripts given by the officials, and at the same time, they could enjoy the basic salary given by the officials. If the people gave a lot of tips, the entertainers could also get a share of the tips. Real people acted out the content of the novel, which was more interesting than the stories told by the storytellers. Every time the theater troupe set up the stage to perform, the surrounding area of 100 feet would be tightly packed with people, and it was very lively. The people of Wanzhou waited for the new play, just like the audience in the streaming room waiting for the online novel to be adapted into a movie. It was painful and happy. However, the former did not have as rich an entertainment life as the latter. The entertainment industry in Wanzhou was under the control of the officials, so the people had no choice. It was good enough that their favorite novel could be adapted into a theater, so the people ended up watching it with relish and completely forgot about themselves. Jiang Pingji was busy with government affairs while arranging the New Year's banquet. She was so busy that she had almost no time to rest. It was the first time that Han Yu, Qin Gong and the others participated in the New Year's banquet, so they did not know many of the rules. They could only ask the experienced people in private. Those who have families bring their families, and those who don't, bring their stomachs. The New Year's banquet is for fun, so there's no need to be as cautious as usual. Yang Si smiled and said, "Let's not talk about other things. The dishes of the New Year's banquet held by the Lord are different every year. I heard that there will be fruits and vegetables this year. In winter, most people ate meat or wild dried products. Vegetables and fruits were almost delusional." Fruits and vegetables? At this time of the year? Han Yu was skeptical about Yang Si's words. He had cheated Yang Si before, but who could guarantee that the narrow-minded Yang Si would not dig a trap for himself? "I heard that it was Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang from the woodworking workshop who came up with it. You know that the weather in the north is cold, and the barren Beiyuan is freezing all year round. In order to resist the severe cold, the people gathered their ideas and came up with a good idea. That's how the heating bed came about." Yang Si said, "This thing can make the room as warm as spring, and it can also make the spring and summer fruits and vegetables ripen in winter. It's a pity that it's a little expensive." Yang Si was a foodie and he was very picky. Eating fruits and vegetables in winter was something that he dreamed of. Now that his wish had come true, he naturally raised both his hands and feet in agreement. Han Yu frowned. "Not going with the flow of nature, not in season, and it's not harmful to eat them?" People believed that there must be demons when something abnormal happened. Wasn't it evil that the fruits and vegetables did not ripen in the right season? Confucius once said, "Don't eat when it's not in season," which meant that they would not eat when it was not in season. Chapter 1236. Yang Si said, "You won't die from eating them. They're all the same, it's just that the season is different. My Lord wants to do things that ordinary people can't do. Fruits and vegetables that are out of season are naturally included. Moreover, it's hot and dry after winter. Consuming too much dried meat is harmful to one's health. If there's something wrong with fruits and vegetables that can warm the Kong, it's because it's too much manpower and nothing else." Yang Si's words reminded Han Yu of what Jiang Pingji had said when she tried to recruit him. Her lord's ambition was to create a world that others couldn't imagine. What was eating fruits and vegetables that were out of season considered a big deal? Maybe it was just an appetizer. Han Yu said, "I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried that my lord will be accused of being extravagant." The Kong warming was not the first invention in Wanzhou. It was quite popular in Beiyuan. However, those who could afford it were mostly wealthy families. Ordinary people could only dream about it. With the Kong warming, the technology of the greenhouse was naturally not far behind. According to historical records, the technology had been around for hundreds of years. It was specially supplied to the royal family. Although the technology of the greenhouse could subvert the season and allow the nobles to eat fresh fruits and vegetables in the unseasonable season, the technology was too costly. There was once an emperor who thought it was too extravagant and ordered it to be banned. Over time, the technology gradually became history. Rather than saying that the people were going against the season, and there must be something wrong when things are abnormal, it was better to say that the greenhouse was too extravagant. Scholars also cared about their reputation. To say that the greenhouse was too extravagant was a direct slap in the face to their immediate superior. Therefore they took a different approach and changed their argument. "Is my lord still considered extravagant?" Yang Si laughed. "Don't worry, Wenbin. Xiao Yu said that all the expenditures for the greenhouse will be from my lord's private treasury. My lord just wants to have a good New Year's banquet so that everyone can eat fresh fruits and vegetables in winter. It's not as serious as you think. If someone thought that the fruits and vegetables that were out of season were poisonous, then don't eat them." Anyway, Yang Si was ready to eat to his heart's content. Han Yu could only be speechless. As long as my lord was happy, the New Year's banquet was held as scheduled. Early that morning, Wei Ci dug Jiang Pingji out of her bed. The maidservant helped her change into the 9-chapter royal robe that had been prepared. Jiang Pingji wore a heavy imperial robe with 9 stripes. She ascended the gate of the inner city to offer sacrifices and pray for blessings. The crowd below the city shouted at her. The younger children turned their heads blankly and looked at their parents. Looking at such a joyous and friendly scene, Han Yu's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. For this New Year's banquet, he brought his wife and his eldest legitimate son. His wife was absent-minded the whole time. Although the smile on her face was flawless, the way she secretly looked at Jiang Pingji was very disrespectful. The eldest legitimate son followed the children to pay their New Year's greetings. He returned to the banquet with a thick red envelope in his hand. His cheeks were red and his eyes were filled with excitement. When he was about to speak to Han Yu, his mother, Madame Han, glared at him. The child was so scared that he shrunk his shoulders and became as quiet as a quail. Han Yu said, "Don't be rude at the New Year's banquet." Madame Han didn't even turn her head. She raised her handkerchief to cover her mouth and said, "I am restraining my son from being rude. What did I do wrong?" Han Yu said, "My lord's intention was to make everyone feel better. Madam, you don't have to restrain your child like this. Just don't be rude." He saw a few children who had received the red envelopes were laughing and chatting with their parents. It looked very warm and happy. This New Year's banquet was like a family gathering. There was no need for etiquette. Madame Han said sarcastically, "Lang Jun, you should be more cautious. If something happens in the future, even the smallest mistake will be a big one." Han Yu's eldest legitimate son looked at his parents' conversation and felt a little uneasy. Although he didn't understand what they were talking about, the atmosphere between them made him feel a little uncomfortable. Han Yu could only ignore Madame Han. According to her temperament, she wouldn't do anything out of line at the New Year's banquet anyway. If there was anything, they could talk about it after the banquet was over. The theater arranged a few lively new plays. The actors who participated in the performances were all the best actors. Everyone watched with great interest. When the atmosphere was almost hyped up, it was time for the entertainment that everyone brought. They played the guqin, danced with the sword, wrote calligraphy, recited poems and composed poems. It was not terrible to have the same performance, but it would be embarrassing for anyone who did not perform well. Madame Han agreed with the literary talent of those people, but she was quite disdainful of their public performances. She smiled and asked Han Yu, "Doesn't Lord Lanting want to join the fun with the people?" Jiang Pingji had amazing hearing. Of course, she didn't miss the movements of Han Yu and his wife, who were sitting in the front row. Chapter 1238. Jiang Pingji giggled and said, "I'm having fun with the people today. If I don't play well, please don't mind." Everyone, was there still a need to say it? Didn't he know how good his lord's flute skills were? Jiang Pingji placed the jade flute to her lips and played a cheerful tune. She might not be good at anything else, but her ability to imitate and memorize was top-notch. Ever since the battle with the Gaoyue clan ended, Wei Xi had taught her how to play the flute in private. After all, she couldn't just play it randomly every time, right? Jiang Pingji was a busy person. She did not have much time to learn. So far, she only knew one song. Even if he only knew one song, he would barely be able to deal with it. Everyone and the 850,000 salted fish in the live stream were already mentally prepared for the demonic music to pour into their ears, but to their surprise, the flute music wasn't unpleasant at all. While the others were dumbfounded, Wei Xi smiled faintly. Although her skills were mediocre, his lord knew how to tame beasts, which added a lot of color to the song. As the sound of the flute rang out, the iron-eating beast that had burrowed into Wei Xi's arms seemed to have been summoned by something. Its huge face was filled with confusion. The crowd watched as it held a plate of fruits with its two front paws and walked on its two hind legs. It circled around Jiang Pingji with each step it took. As it circled, it used its hind legs to beat the beat and hummed a tune. When the tune ended, the iron-eating beast seemed to have gained intelligence. It nodded and bowed to Jiang Pingji. It held the plate of fruits high up and presented it to her in a pious manner. Jiang Pingji did not take it, so it put the fruit platter down. "You may leave." The iron-eating beast seemed to understand her words. It wriggled its way towards Wei Xi, clinging onto his knees as it climbed into his embrace. It found a comfortable position, yawned, and closed its eyes to sleep. Jiang Pingji smiled and kept the jade flute. She bent over to pick up the fruit platter and put it back on Wei Xi's table. Everyone was in a daze for a long time. They looked at Jiang Pingji and then at the sleeping cub. Could it be that this iron-eating beast had become a spirit? So human-like? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "It's just a small trick to train beasts. It's fine to use it for entertainment and to make you laugh." It took a long time for everyone to recover from the show. Even if Jiang Pingji's song was not exquisite, the addition of the iron-eating beast's performance still brought about a qualitative change in the entire program. Not only did he not make a fool of himself, but he also added a layer of mystery to himself. The people of this era were still very superstitious. The more extraordinary Jiang Pingji's performance was, the better it would be. Naturally, the more outstanding she would be. Han Yu said, "Are you satisfied now? This is the New Year's banquet. Restrain yourself. Don't lose your manners and make a fool of yourself." Mrs. Han would not listen to anything else, but when it came to her manners and dignity, she would listen to it very well. No matter how resentful Mrs. Han was, she did not dare to show her anger. She could only swallow it back. Jiang Pingji laughed and chatted with the crowd while secretly glancing at Han Yu and his wife. The couple did not seem to get along well. But, after all, it was Han Yu's family business. As a man he would handle it well. Jiang Pingji was an outsider and the lord. It was not appropriate for her to intervene. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Jiang Pingji took the crowd to watch a few lively new plays. Some of the new plays were warm and happy and some were purely funny like crosstalk and skit. When it was almost time, Jiang Pingji asked them to go home and stay with their families for the New Year's Eve. It was the first time that the eldest son of Han Yu's wife had a New Year's Eve like this. He was still thinking about the content of the new plays and the peers he had just met. Mrs. Han sat in the carriage silently. There was a distance of a few fists between her and Han Yu. Han Yu said, "After the New Year's Eve, I plan to send my son to the Golden Scale Academy for his education." "How can the Golden Scale Academy compare to my family's school?" Mrs. Han frowned. "That kind of place will lead the students astray?" Han Yu was a little angry. He said, "My teacher also teaches in the academy. How can it lead the students astray?" Mrs. Han did not say anything, but judging from her eyes and expression, she did not approve of Han Yu. So what if it was the Golden Scale Academy? How could a reputation that was made up of be compared to the aristocratic families that had made great contributions? However, her husband did not understand her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged. In order to be a good example of a noble lady, she promoted the maids who had served Han Yu before their marriage. She even gave them face and treated their children kindly. She had worked hard for her family, but she could not get Han Yu's understanding and respect. Mrs. Han said forcefully, "If you want to use the children's future to flatter them, you can humiliate anyone but me." The sons and daughters of concubines in the inner courtyard could just go to the Golden Scale Academy. Anyway, they were the sons of concubines who couldn't be seen in public. It would be a waste for them to study with a bunch of lowly commoners' children. If she let her eldest son go to the academy, she would cry to death. Han Yu was so angry that his face turned green. The eldest son of the concubine lowered his head silently under the gloomy atmosphere. He did not dare to look at his parents. "You are not allowed to be willful and mischievous." Mrs. Han sneered. "Are you really as cruel as iron? Are you going to humiliate my son?" Han Yu said, "I am not humiliating him. I love him dearly. Why would I harm him?" Mrs. Han was disheartened. She was so angry that she and Han Yu lived separately. She left the father and son to stay up for the New Year's Eve and went to bed early. Han Yu let out a long sigh, but he could not do anything to his wife. "When you go to the Golden Scale Academy, treat your classmates with courtesy. Do not be arrogant." Han Yu gently reminded his eldest son during the New Year's Eve. The eldest son was gentle and obedient. Chapter 1239. After the beginning of the new year, happy events came one after another. The most exciting event was Feng Zhen and Wan Xiuer's wedding. This pair was really beyond everyone's expectations. After all, who didn't know what kind of person Feng Longzi was? Everyone heard that Feng Zhen was getting married, but many people thought it was just gossip. After all, Feng Zhen's image as a prodigal son was deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Everyone would rather believe that a sow climbed a tree than believe that Feng Zhen would change his mind. Especially the middle-level newcomers recruited by the Golden Scale Pavilion, they had a deep understanding of this. When Jiang Pingji dealt with Su Bei last year, Feng Zhen stayed behind to guard the rear. The new recruits would have to interact with Feng Zhen and the others. Putting aside his ability to get things done, Feng Zhen's image as a prodigal son was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Many of the new recruits hadn't even familiarized themselves with the affairs of the city, but they had already heard rumors about Feng Zhen making a scene at some wine shop. How rare was this? Was there anyone in this world who could take in this prodigal son? The old official did not move, but the new official could not suppress his curiosity. He raised his head in anticipation, waiting to see what kind of fairy the bride was. In the words of the viewers in the live stream room, who would dare to go up Liangshan if they didn't have a few tricks up their sleeve? Feng Zhen said proudly, "This is called a prodigal who repents is more precious than gold." Yang Si sneered, mercilessly mocking Feng Zhen. "You're a real wastrel. I don't know if you'll really turn back." Feng Zhen choked on his words. How could he speak like a human? Was there a need to question his character? A spit and a nail, a promise as heavy as Mount Tai. If he said he would turn back without any hesitation. Feng Zhen resisted the urge to roll his eyes and strangle Yang Si. He gritted his teeth and said, "We're about to get married. Can't you say something nice?" Although he was a romantic, he was not a man without family responsibilities. It was fine to fool around before marriage, but after marriage it was time to turn over a new leaf. He and Feng Yi's mother had been in love for a while after they got married. If it wasn't for the early death of his first wife, Feng Zhen wouldn't have completely let himself go after her death. Although he was unrestrained, he was only unrestrained and not a scumbag. The relationship between a man and a woman was about compatibility. A melon that was forcefully twisted would not be sweet. Mutual consent was the way of the king. He still had this bit of moral integrity. Seeing that Feng Zhen's explanation was logical, Yang Si could only respond with a cold huff. Could he say that he was very unhappy? Feng Zhen, that little b*tsich, had found an honest man to take over his business. Now he had a wife, a son and a wife. He was a winner in life. Why was he still alone? Yang Si looked calm and collected on the surface, but in fact he was filled with resentment. His face was drooping all day long as if he was dissatisfied. Dian Yin, who was being taught by Yang Si, spoke up weakly, "Isn't it easy for military advisor Yang to start a family? As long as you let out the slightest bit of news, wouldn't those matchmakers rush over like a hive of bees with portraits of girls in their hands and trample over your doorstep?" Yang Si secretly glared at Dian Yin. Was it fun to tear him down? This crude and stupid martial artist had not improved at all. How could women be the same? What was the difference between a person without any pursuit and a salted fish? If he were to marry a wife, he would naturally marry the one he liked the most in his eyes. Any random woman would suffice. He might as well continue to fool around. If it's that easy, why don't you find one? He couldn't diss that little b*tch Feng Zhen, but wouldn't it be easy to deal with Dian Yin? Who would have thought that Dian Yin, this dark-skinned and honest man, would also commit adultery? I'm already married and have a wife. Of course I don't need to look for one. He looked at Yang Si and stammered, "Have you forgotten, military advisor? My wife was a matchmaker for me. She's now the centurion of the casualty barracks." Yang Si was stunned. He thought back carefully and it seemed that there really was such a thing. This happened when the two of them were ordered to guard Hu County. Yang Si saw that Dian Yin, this honest man, was all alone and didn't even have a wife who could take care of him. Yang Si acted like a matchmaker and introduced him to someone. Dian Yan's wife was originally the centurion of the female battalion. She was about to be promoted, but she was injured and had no choice but to retire. After that, she applied to go to the casualty barracks and became an apprentice with the military doctor. She learned pretty good trauma treatment. This girl's character was straightforward and generous. Her family background was clean and she had no parents or brothers to hold her back. The key was that she was not bad-looking and could read a few words. Among the commoners, she could be considered a model girl that would be sought after by hundreds of families. Yang Si was tempted and introduced her to Dian Yin as a matchmaker. Don't let goodies flow to outsiders. He never expected that this matter would become a stone that would smash his own foot. This boorish man was really pissed off. Yang Si glared at Dian Yin angrily. The latter was at a loss and didn't know how he had offended his military advisor Yang. Flirtatious words aside, Feng Zhen was getting married. He still had to give his blessings. In this world, it wasn't easy to start a family. Chapter 1240. Perhaps even God couldn't bear to see Feng Zhen being so smug. He had only taken 3 days off before he was summoned back urgently. Feng Zhen was having a wild time. He and Wan Xiu were so intimate that they couldn't wait to be together every day. How could he care about the cold government affairs? "I've rested long enough," Jiang Pingji said heartlessly. "It's time for you to get back to business." Feng Zhen argued, "My lord, this is different from what I said before. It's only been 3 days. When Li Yun and Shangguan Wang got married, how long was their wedding leave? This matter had to be treated equally. How could she favor one and discriminate against the other?" Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly, "Didn't I give you a long leave to handle your wedding?" Feng Zhen was speechless. Was the time spent preparing for the wedding counted as a part of the wedding leave? As if she could read Feng Zhen's mind, Jiang Pingji almost rolled her eyes. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Feng Zhen's wedding leave was the busiest period before the new year. Jiang Pingji allowed him to take leave and assigned the heavy government affairs to others. She was already being extremely kind. If she let Feng Zhen take another half a month or a month's leave, the others would be resentful. After the new year it was spring plowing and training. Everyone was busy. There was no reason for Feng Zhen to stay at home and be lovey-dovey with his lovely wife. Feng Zhen's request was rejected by Jiang Pingji. He could only resign himself to his fate and go to work. He was as dispirited as a salted fish. He didn't know if someone was trying to mess with him. Feng Zhen realized that the tasks he took on after he returned to work were troublesome and above average. He had been busy for 2 days. The dark circles under his eyes that he had painstakingly disappeared reappeared. He looked even more like he had kidney deficiency. This bunch of animals? Feng Zhen was smiling on the surface, but he was cursing in his heart. Did he not burn enough incense in his previous life to meet such a bunch of unscrupulous colleagues? The spring plowing was carried out in full swing. After Jiang Pingji presided over the ceremony, she stayed in the military camp to train the soldiers. Is the Duke of Lanting going to attack again this year? Tea houses and restaurants had always been the birthplace of gossip and a place for communication. The scholars within the borders of Dongqing who were attracted by the Golden Scale Pavilion loved to stop and stay in these places. They talked about current affairs in the world. If there was anything shocking, the Duke of Lanting might find out and punish them. Although the possibility of this was very small, one should have a dream as well. The Golden Scale Pavilion's assessment was very strict, and there would always be people who liked to take a different path. The Duke of Lanting received orders in the face of danger to expel the 2 traitors, integrate Wanzhou, form an alliance at the Huangshui River, enter Chongzhou in the north, control Hu County in the south, and integrate the forces of the north of Dongqing to resist the external troubles of the north borderline. After that, the entire north was calm and peaceful. After a few years of rest and reorganization, the Duke of Lanting felt that the time was ripe. Only then did he send troops to the north borderline and recover it in one fell swoop. How can this be called being a warmonger? Being a warmonger meant mobilizing troops to fight a war without a sense of propriety and overdrawing one's foundation. Their Duke of Lanting obviously did not do that. She chose to mobilize troops to the north borderline at a time when their vitality was at its weakest. It was obviously planned, organized, and premeditated. Turning the north borderline into the north province would also greatly damage their vitality and cause them to face the predicament of being surrounded by enemies on all sides. If they showed the slightest bit of cowardice at that time, they would certainly be hunted down and eaten by the heroes. How could they be compared to the magnificent scene of everyone sitting upright in the tea house and talking with fervor and assurance now? Su Bei was executed and Zhou and Shanghai counties were conquered. Most of Dongqing is already in the bag. If we don't take advantage of this victory to pursue and attack, it will be difficult to eliminate Huang Song when he has a firm foothold. In summary, Jiang Pingji had her reasons for mobilizing her troops. She mobilized her troops to allow the people in the rear to enjoy peace. Even if they didn't support her, they shouldn't make a fuss. What was the difference between this and picking up a bowl to eat and then putting down the chopsticks to curse? Her impassioned speech made many people's faces turn red with shame or ashen. Those who were more thin-skinned directly flicked their sleeves and left. Even the people could see Jiang Pingji's intention to mobilize her troops, let alone her enemies. Huang Song's side seemed calm, but in fact, undercurrents were surging in the dark. He was actively training his troops for war and stockpiling food on a large scale. It seemed like he was on the verge of breaking out. Everyone was preparing for war. Of course, in ancient times, wars could not be fought at will. They had to choose the right time. It was inadvisable to start a war before and after the spring plowing. In this era, the efficiency and harvest of crops were very low. The staple crops were basically harvested once a year. In other words, if they missed this year's spring plowing, then the entire year's harvest would be gone. In war, not only did it depend on manpower, but it also depended on food and logistics. Once there was no food, how could they fight a war? The war could only start after the spring plowing. This was a convention. Chapter 1241. The territory under Jiang Pingji's rule was filled with a foreboding atmosphere. She trained her troops day by day. Everyone thought she was going to fight Huang Song. Everyone was guessing when she would do it. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji was much more composed than they thought. The storm in the outside world did not affect the atmosphere in the academy. The sound of students reading in the classroom was still light and pleasant. Under Jiang Pingji's suggestion, the Golden Scale Academy made a rule to recruit new students every spring. The adults outside were busy with the spring plowing. A group of little radishes also passed the selection and became the newest batch of students in the Golden Scale Academy. Apart from the freshmen of the lowest grade, other classes also welcomed some transfer students. Despite Mrs. Han's strong resistance, Han Yu still sent 3 children of the right age to the Golden Scale Academy. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter. The eldest son of the legal wife and the second son of the concubine had been educated for several years. The eldest daughter of the legal wife was 1 year younger than the second son of the concubine. The youngest son of the legal wife was only 2 years old and was still learning how to speak. Han Yu sent all 3 children to the Golden Scale Academy in one go. Mrs. Han was so angry that she almost fainted. The masters of the Golden Scale Academy took half a day to test the knowledge of the 3 children. Han Yu was very attentive to the eldest son of the legal wife. He was also the one who taught him. Later, he was sent to Mrs. Han's family to study. Although the second son of the legal wife was not as valued as the eldest son of the legal wife, he was also taught by a famous old scholar. The only daughter of the legal wife was also taught by a female master. Although she was not as good as her 2 brothers, she was still acceptable. The masters of the Golden Scale Academy tested them one by one and divided them into 3 different classes. Han Yu's eldest son of the legal wife was in the same class as Feng Yi. The master of this class was Master Yuanjing. "What's your name?" Master Yuanjing took the child away and personally sent him to the classroom. "I am Han Run. Greetings, Grandmaster." Han Yu was Master Yuanjing's apprentice. Naturally, the child had to call him Grandmaster. "You can call me Grandmaster in private, but you are a student in the academy. I am your master." Master Yuanjing liked Han Run. The child's eyes were very similar to Han Yu's when he was young, but his temperament was the opposite of Han Yu's. "Your father is busy with government affairs and has no time for your studies. If there is anything you don't understand, you must ask the masters. They will help you." Han Run's little face was a little hesitant. "If I call you master, wouldn't it be wrong? If that was the case, wouldn't he be the same generation as his father?" Master Yuanjing smiled and said, "This is not considered a mistake in seniority. Who says that I can't teach you after I taught your father?" After all, Han Run was a new student. If he addressed Master Yuanjing as Grandmaster, it would inevitably be a little unconventional. The other students of the academy were more powerful than him. Was Yuanjing's academy by the other students? With and by Master Han Yun? What? Master Yuanjing arranged for Han Run to be next to Feng Yi. He hoped that Feng Yi could help Han Run blend into the unfamiliar environment. Jiang. By. Jiang In. By. The teaching model and environment of the Golden Scale Academy were very different from the clan school. Han Run was not used to it at first. Han Run felt like he had opened the door to a new world. In the morning there were cultural classes and in the afternoon, there were equestrian and martial arts classes. Before he knew it, the sun had set. Han Run noticed Feng Yi and put his textbook into his bag. "Are you ready?" Feng Yi asked. Han Run was surprised. It was the first time Feng Yi talked to him. Because of his mother's character, Han Run was shy and introverted. But he was different from Sun Lan, who was innocent and harmless. He always acted cautiously. He didn't dare to talk to Feng Yi. He didn't expect her to greet him. Han Run said, "Yes, I'm ready." Feng Yi asked, "I heard that some of your siblings are also studying in the academy?" Han Run pursed his lips and answered, "Yes." Feng Yi said, "Great. Let's go pick them up and go back together." Han Run's eyes were filled with doubt. "Pick them up?" Feng Yi said, "The Golden Scale Academy is not in the residential area. It is not remote, but there are many people. After all, the students were still young. If they encountered an adult with ill intentions, it would be impossible to guard against it. You are new students and don't know the way. I will send you back." Han Run wanted to say something but swallowed his words. He always had a question. Why didn't they let their servants drive them? Why did they have to walk by themselves? Wouldn't it be easier to encounter danger on the road? Feng Yi comforted him, "There are people around to protect us. We don't have to worry about danger." Han Yu's mansion was the closest. Han Run and the other 2 were sent back first. Chiguan Jinghui and Sun Lan followed. Chongqing was the last one. "I just asked. Brother Han Run and his younger brother are only 5 months apart," Feng Yi said, "because the other one is born of a concubine. They don't share the same mother." Changxing said, "No wonder they walk so far away. They are not close at all." Feng Yi said, "It would be strange if the son of a legal wife and the son of a concubine were close. Aren't they all brothers?" Feng Yi laughed, "Brothers depend on the situation. Han Run has a good personality. He doesn't have any bad feelings for his brother, but his brother doesn't think so. The identity of a legal wife and a concubine is a chasm. One is the legitimate son and the other is not. The difference is huge." Changxing said, "If Aunt Feng has a child in the future and has a brother, will he be a concubine's brother?" "No, he will be a legal wife's son. He will be my biological brother." Changxing was confused. It's so hard to understand." Feng Yi said, "You will understand when you grow up." Changxing was tired after a few steps and let Feng Yi carry her. "Will brother Feng Yi have a son of a concubine in the future?" Feng Yi laughed, "No, he will only have a legal wife's son." Since it was the first time that the eldest son of a legal wife went to the Golden Scale Academy to study, Han Yu waited at home. "How is the academy?" Han Run answered with a red face, "The academy is great. The classmates are great too." Although it was only a day, Han Run clearly felt the difference between the academy and the family school. In the family school, it was difficult for the master to take care of the progress of all the students. After all, Han Run was not a member of the family. The master of the family school always looked after the direct descendant of the family first. Han Run could only keep his questions to himself and wait for his father or the master to solve them in private. Although the progress of his studies was not slow, the efficiency of his studies was indeed very low. Today Han Run found that the progress of more than 20 classmates was almost the same. The content that the master talked about was suitable for them. Han Yu listened carefully to his son's daily life in the academy and felt relieved. Chapter 1242. Although Han Yu had just surrendered, Jiang Pingji trusted him very much. She even entrusted the task of preparing military provisions to Han Yu and Su Ku. Su Ku had been serving Jiang Pingji for a long time, so he was naturally capable. It was the first task Han Yu received after he joined Jiang Pingji's camp, so he had to do it properly. He was too busy with government affairs and had no spare energy to take care of family affairs. In the end, he had to ask his wife for help. After thinking for a while, Han Yu tried to persuade his wife with affection and reason, trying to ease the relationship between husband and wife. Mrs. Han was still unhappy, but since Han Yu had come to her in person, she could only swallow her anger and plan for the future. The relationship between husband and wife seemed to be improving, but it was actually freezing. Mrs. Han belittled the Golden Scale Academy in front of her son whenever she had time, which made Han Run very helpless. "Mother, there are many great scholars in the Golden Scale Academy. They can solve the students' doubts at any time. I think studying in the academy is much better than studying in the family school." Mrs. Han's face was livid. She said, "My son is still young. How can he distinguish between good and bad? The family school is accumulated through generations of meritorious deeds. It's the essence of the predecessors. The foundation of the family school is incomparable to that of an ordinary family. Isn't it a waste of my son's time to study here?" As a son, Han Run could not refute his mother. He could only endure and listen patiently. After all, Han Run was the son of Mrs. Han. How could she not know her son? Seeing her son's unchanging attitude, Madame Han felt even more stifled in her chest. Had her husband and son been poisoned by someone? Why were they so partial to an ordinary family? Although Han Run was not brainwashed by his mother, he was tired of being harassed day after day. Feng Yi saw through his emotions. After she asked, Han Run told her the truth about his troubles. "Mother, it seems that you still insist that I go to the family school." Han Run knew his mother's character. She was too stubborn. She rarely changed her mind. "I don't want to. Besides, the family school is far away in Zhe County and my parents are in Wanzhou." Although Han Run was young, he had a certain judgment ability. He did not know how much trust Jiang Pingji had in his father, but he could guess that Han Run, as the eldest son of Han Yu, did not stay in Wanzhou. Instead, he went to the family school in Zhe County, which was thousands of miles away. He was afraid that it would be a taboo. Han Run did not want his father to be put in a difficult position. Feng Yi frowned. Madame Han's stubbornness was beyond his imagination. In the short term it wouldn't affect Han Run, but in the long run, it would inevitably distract him from his studies. Madame Han and her eldest son Han Run were also involved and ended up being beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Because of Jiang Yan's influence, Wei Ci did not like Han Run. However, when he thought about the Han Run that he had met at Feng Zhen's wedding, he was obedient despite his young age. Wuxia had no idea how he grew up to be like that. Now that he thought about it, it was most likely because of his mother's influence over the years, which ruined a good seedling. Han Yu neglected to teach his child, which led to Han Run's bad behavior in the future. What's so difficult about it? Just let him die. Jiang Pingji held a pen in her mouth. She raised one hand to put aside the processed bamboo slips and took a new one with the other. Wuxia said, "This won't do. It will be bad if Wenbin finds out." "I was joking just now." Jiang Pingji took down the pen and wrote down the instructions. She said to Wuxia, "It's normal to be arrogant when one is born into an aristocratic family. Madame Han is relying on the power of her family. No matter how powerful they are, they still rely on me to survive and live. Go and check on her wife's family. I don't believe there is any aristocratic family that is completely clean. Once you find out, take your time. She cares so much about her family. If something happens to her family, she won't have the time to harass her son." Wuxia was speechless. What a good move to remove the firewood from under the pot. Wuxia wanted Han Yu and Madame Han to divorce, but he did not expect his lord to be even more ruthless. Jiang Pingji said, "Divorce is actually a good idea, but it's too time-consuming. Wenbin will easily find out. If you hurt your friendship with Wenbin because of this woman, it will not be worth it. Besides, Wenbin is busy with official business, so someone has to take care of the house. Madame Han has a bad temper, but she is good at managing the house. It's good to keep her." Jiang Pingji knew that Madame Han did not like her, but who was she? Chapter 1243. The busy spring plowing slowly came to an end. Time steadily entered April. The audience in the streaming room was looking forward to and worried about the war that had yet to begin. Many of them were impatient and gradually forgot about it. Jiang Pingji had been busy with government affairs for the past few months. Apart from presiding over the spring plowing ceremony, she spent the rest of her time running around and inspecting the situation. The two most important things were the progress of the water-powered spinning wheel and cotton. These two pieces of good news eased the tense atmosphere. Since Jiang Pingji supported Huijun to work on the water-powered spinning wheel, Huijun devoted most of her energy to it. The remaining space was left for the twins. The idea of using the power of water to weave was a fantasy. However, after Jiang Pingji's analysis and encouragement, Huijun felt that it would definitely work. If it didn't work, it must be because she didn't find the right way and didn't work hard enough. With this idea in mind, Huijun often went to the woodworking workshop to look for Zhang Ping or Xiao Guang. This made Fu Wang's subordinates think that she planted 2 blades of grass for Fu Wang. Huijun knew about this and responded with a cold snort. She and Fu Wang were not husband and wife in name. Their relationship was limited to having 2 children together. Fu Wang could not control her no matter who she was close to. Planting grass? It was none of his business to plant a grassland. Of course, her relationship with Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang was not ambiguous. Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang also tried their best to help her practice and perfect the concept of the water-powered spinning wheel with the knowledge of the Mahists. Several generations of models were produced in the past 2 or 3 years, but they were not satisfactory. It seemed that something was missing. When the Lord returned with the troops, the woodworking workshop had a new member. This newcomer was incredible. Not only was she a rare female in the carpentry workshop, but she was also a student who had been taught by the Mahist master. Bai Yuexia was not good at government affairs. Jiang Pingji assigned her to the woodworking workshop and assigned her to work under Zhang Ping. Although Bai Yuexia was a woman, his lord was also a woman. How could Zhang Ping dare to be disrespectful? It was just that many jobs in the woodworking workshop were tiring. It was common to work overtime and stay up late to revise the design. Zhang Ping was worried that a young girl like Bai Yuexia could not handle it. At first, Bai Yuexia misunderstood the woodworking workshop as an ordinary place. Only when she arrived did she realize that it was very different from what she imagined. Although the name of the woodworking workshop was misleading, it was actually a department with a proper title. As one of the workshop owners of the carpentry workshop, Zhang Ping's salary was only 20 to 30% lower than that of the registrar of the prefecture government. Knowing this, Bai Yuexia finally felt relieved. Her ambition was not to become an ordinary carpenter. The office space that Jiang Pingji allocated to the carpentry workshop was very large. The periphery was filled with ordinary items, and the items and documents were more valuable as they went deeper into the workshop. Bai Yuexia was assigned to be Zhang Ping's assistant. She had a higher starting point, so naturally she had access to more confidential places. After working with them for a while, she fell in love with this job. Not only was the place of work interesting, but the colleagues were also very interesting. What made her feel most comfortable was the way Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang looked at her. The latter's eyes revealed a bit of strangeness when he first saw her, but the former completely treated her like an ordinary girl, as if he didn't notice the ugly birthmark that took up most of her face. Just this alone was enough to win her favor. When Bai Ning heard his daughter mention the name of another unfamiliar man, he immediately began to plan. If Zhang Ping didn't have a family, he would be a good son-in-law. Little did he know that it was not that Zhang Ping didn't notice Bai Yuexia's birthmark. He was so calm because he had a problem with his aesthetic standards. Why did Wei Ci want to sell Zhang Ping to Bai Yuexia so that Bai Yuexia would not covet Zhang Pingji? Because he knew that Zhang Ping didn't judge a person's beauty by their face, but by their hands. Zhang Ping didn't hear it wrong. Zhang Ping's standard for beauty was the hands, not the face. Why was Zhang Ping so obsessed with his wife, Crane, and still single after so many years? Not only because he liked to be single, but there was another important reason. The only two pairs of hands that he liked were his own and Wei Ci's. Wei Ci was male, not female, and he was also his best friend. Zhang Ping couldn't possibly attack him with a disease, right? Wei Ci noticed Bai Yuexia's hands. According to the aesthetic standards of a mechanical otaku, the hands could score 95 out of 100. Zhang Ping was blind and had facial blindness. Bai Yuexia looked like a fairy, so he couldn't appreciate it. After a few days, Zhang Ping noticed the new assistant. As an otaku who was close to the level of a great magister, he felt moved for the first time. Looking at those hands, he felt a feather gently tickling his heart. The unfamiliar feeling made him confused and helpless. However, Zhang Ping's personality was not much more outgoing than Wei Ci's. He was obsessed with carpentry and didn't know how to express his feelings. In the eyes of outsiders and Bai Yuexia, Zhang Ping was just a qualified and friendly superior. One day, Zhang Ping was modifying the latest version of the hydraulic spinning wheel. This version of the spinning wheel was very close to the ideal state, but something went wrong and there were always problems when it ran. Zhang Ping and Hui Jun racked their brains over this problem until Bai Yuexia's words woke them up. After the modification, the hydraulic spinning wheel could smoothly use the power of water. There were no problems when it ran for a while. Although the single efficiency was still not high and it couldn't be compared to manual spinning, if one person took care of more than 10 hydraulic spinning wheels, the efficiency would be like a runaway wild horse. When the good news reached Jiang Pingji's ears, the whole streaming room was in an uproar. Their streamer usually didn't make a sound, but the slightest movement would cause a big problem. When they saw the ancient version of the hydraulic spinning wheel, the audience immediately took screenshots and rushed to the top searches. However, Zhang Ping wasn't very optimistic about it. Firstly, the efficiency didn't reach the expected figure. Secondly, the spinning wheel relied too much on water. Once the water flow reached the dry period, the spinning wheel was basically useless. It was too unstable. It was better to use the original manpower. In addition, if spinning was completely replaced by hydraulic spinning, it would have a big impact on ordinary farmers. It was fine to make it for fun, but it was almost impossible to promote it on a large scale. Jiang Pingji had already made a decision, but she wanted her subordinates to use their own brains. Then tell me your opinion? Although Zhang Ping was a technical otaku, it didn't mean that he didn't pass the cultural class. He just wasn't as proficient as Wei Ci and the others. I think there are 4 problems with this. First, although the people's lives have improved, the clothes they wear aren't expensive and the demand isn't high. The output of ordinary households is roughly equal to the demand. Second, if the hydraulic spinning wheel takes away the livelihood of ordinary farmers, the value of the cloth will decrease. I'm afraid many people will lose their livelihood. Third, the spinning wheel needs water to run. If there's a drought and no rain, the wheel will be useless and can only be left to rot. Fourth, the spinning wheel can make a lot of things, but there aren't many materials for weaving. The first 3 points were very important, but the most important point was the 4th point. There weren't many raw materials for weaving. No matter how capable the hydraulic spinning wheel was, how much could it do? If the returns couldn't match the investment, wouldn't it be a loss-making business? Jiang Pingji didn't want to scare the idle audience anymore. She simply said, although Shiheng's concerns are reasonable, it's not like there are no solutions to these difficult problems. Shiheng, my current ambition is to let all the people in the world be able to wear warm clothes and eat their fill. This thing is very useful. Zhang Ping looked at Jiang Pingji. He had always been face blind, but when he saw the expression on his lord's face, he suddenly understood what Wuxia had said. Wuxia had said that when the Lord talked about serious matters, her eyes would shine, as if they could see through time and see the future. Zhang Ping initially despised Wuxia for being too artsy, but now he empathized with him. It was indeed glowing. Zhang Ping was blinded by the light, and Bai Yuexia's fangirl was even more intoxicated, unable to extricate herself. What does my lord want? We haven't made any progress yet, but it won't be long. However, the spinning wheels here still need to be modified. I'm afraid they won't be enough when the time comes. Jiang Pingji kept them in suspense. She said, it's true that this will harm the livelihood of some people, but it will be beneficial to the people of the world. I will also think of ways to compensate the people whose interests have been damaged. I will try my best to reduce their losses and not affect their family's livelihood. If you are timid and give up the happiness of the majority for the sake of the interests of a small group of people, then you are not a qualified lord. Zhang Ping nodded as he listened, but Bai Yuexia was keenly aware that the lord's last sentence had a double meaning. For the interests of the majority, she could sacrifice the interests of a small group of people without hesitation? What if this small group of people were not ordinary people but the aristocrats? Thinking back to her attitude towards the aristocrats, the commoners and the ordinary people, this lord was indeed different. Bai Yuexia secretly glanced at Jiang Pingji's side profile. She only felt that this person was more upright than the men in the world. She had her own proud and unyielding character. Bai Yuexia and Hui Jun were infatuated with her. Until, Bai Yuexia asked, "My lord, you said that the spinning wheels still need to be modified?" Jiang Pingji said, "Of course it has to be modified." When asked about professional issues, Bai Yuexia naturally had to clarify. What does it have to be modified? The production of a spinning wheel is complicated, but there is only one spindle. Why can't we increase the number of spindles? Jiang Pingji said, instead of using 10 looms to make up 10 spindles, why not put 10 spindles on one machine? Won't there be more silk produced at the same time? This simple sentence immediately caused the two disciples of the Mo family to be dumbfounded. What was this called? The Lord moved her mouth and the subordinates ran errands. Put 10 spindles on one machine and let the spindles work at the same time? Was this possible? Apart from the spinning wheels, Jiang Pingji also wanted them to improve the looms. The efficiency of the current looms was very low, and they basically used both hands. But why not improve the looms so that both hands and feet could work? Zhang Ping and Bai Yuexia were bombarded with questions one after another until they were dizzy. They wished that their parents could give them 2 more heads. The key was that they could not refute. Although the Lord's questions sounded very naive and unreasonable, these questions were like an omnipotent key that immediately unlocked the iron lock that imprisoned their thoughts and provided them with brand new research ideas. But there was another problem. What was the point of them working on the spinning wheels and looms? Where did they get so much yarn and cloth to weave? Reality proved that there was. Another joyous event followed. The newly married Feng Zhen pinched his chin. He only knew that his new wife was imitating Ancestor Lei and doing big things. Ancestor Lei had invented silkworm rearing, while Wan Xiu was planting cotton. Before they got married, Wan Xiu had specially brought some people to the ancestral home and stayed there to do something. She did not hide these things from Feng Zhen, so he was more or less in the know. However, he had never expected that his wife would follow in his master's footsteps. She had killed the big thing without saying a word. A pillow comes when you doze off. Zisher, your wife is much more capable than you. Feng Zhen was dumbfounded and secretly touched his nose. What did he do? He was definitely more capable than his wife. But he could not speak carelessly in front of the Lord, so he obediently served as Wan Xiuer's foil. Jiang Pingji looked at the card of information that Wan Xiuer had brought. The content was very detailed. She laughed and teased, "With this, even if you can't be compared to Ancestor Lei, it's more than enough to earn the title of Little Ancestor Lei. If it succeeds, I will definitely remember your great merit." Wan Xiuer's heart leaped with joy. 2 good things were reported one after the other. Jiang Pingji was in a good mood, but there was always someone who did not have eyes to provoke her. Chapter 1245. Dongqing had a total of 6 states and 21 counties. Its territory spanned from the north to the south. The division of states and counties mostly followed the previous dynasty and was not based on population or land area. As a result, although Hu County, Zhe County and Hu County were counties, the areas of the 3 counties were not small. Hu County was even comparable to the smallest state in Dongqing. Apart from these three special counties, Hejian County, Langya County, and Ningning County were also independent counties. However, the size of the latter three was quite normal. Apart from having special military positions, they were no different from ordinary counties. Langya County had already fallen under Huang Song's rule. Ningning County was located in the south and had previously submitted to Su Bei. Ever since Jiang Pingji had gotten rid of Su Bei, although she hadn't mobilized her troops in Gongning County, the local aristocrats were very tactful and didn't dare to cause a ruckus. It was useless for them to make a ruckus. Jiangning County was attached to a high mountain range. Although it was a beautiful place, it did not produce much food. Jiang Pingji sent troops to choke off all the grain and trade routes in Jiangning County. She could starve hundreds of thousands of people in Jiangning County to death. There were many aristocratic families in Yunning County. They saw that Jiang Pingji was not someone to be trifled with, so they did not go against the law and fight her head-on. Instead, they chose to give in. Among the three counties, Hejian County was the only one without a ruler. It wasn't that Hejian County didn't want to rely on any vassal. It was just that the geography of Hejian County was a bit awkward. It was located on the pulse arteries of Wanzhou, Haozhou, and Sangzhou. It was an important position that could be used to attack or defend. Before the spring plowing, neither Jiang Pingji nor Huang Song dared to mobilize their troops in Hejian County. Once the troops were mobilized, it would be a great war. If the spring plowing was ruined, not only would the interests of the two feudal vassals be harmed, but the people under their rule would also be harmed. Wars could be fought at any time, but the commoners only had one chance to farm. If they missed the opportunity, they would have to endure hunger for an entire year. Apart from that, Hejian County had another significance to Jiang Pingji. All the members of the Lu family lived in Hejian County. The bad news Jiang Pingji received was none other than the fact that Hejian County had been raided by Huang Song's army and had quietly changed hands in the middle of the night. When the bad news reached Jiang Pingji's ears, she was happy about the progress of the spinning wheel and the cotton. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her. Those who were familiar with Jiang Pingji did not dare to look at her expression. How did Hejian County fall? After the battle between Su and Pei ended, Jiang Pingji and Huang Song tacitly dispatched troops to guard the northern and southern borders of Hejian County. Neither side gave in to the other. The two sides maintained a delicate balance. No one dared to make the first move. They could only dispatch many scouts to investigate the enemy's situation. They had to grasp the military situation as soon as possible. Under such circumstances, Jiang Pingji did not know what the guards were doing. Huang Song had already sent his troops to conquer the whole of Hejian County, but the defending general was slow to react. It was already too late. If he didn't give her a convincing reason, she would definitely punish him. Although Jiang Pingji was usually easy to get along with, once she got angry, how could a lowly messenger be able to withstand her power? Without any hesitation, he revealed everything that had happened. After he finished speaking, the messenger soldier trembled and half knelt down to beg for forgiveness. The atmosphere at the scene was extremely solemn. Chiguan Rang, Wei Ci, and the others secretly glanced at their lord from the corner of their eyes. They were mentally prepared for their lord to flip the table, curse Huang Song's ancestors. Even if they lost control of themselves, they could still suppress this matter. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji's self-restraint was excellent. Apart from her somewhat gloomy expression, she did not show any extreme emotions. Hejian's Zhang? Jiang Pingji sneered coldly. Her eyes flashed with murderous intent. They really got away with it back then. The main reason why Hejian County was lost was that Hejian's aristocratic family, the Zhangs, took the lead in responding to the persuasion of Huang Song's subordinates. They secretly colluded with several aristocratic families to control the situation in the county. Later, on the night of the 24th of the third month, they cooperated with Huang Song's garrison troops. On one hand, they took down the Hejian's Lus, Shangguans, and other aristocratic families that were friendly with Jiang Pingji's forces. On the other hand, they welcomed Huang Song's army into the city. In less than half a night, Hejian County changed hands. When everyone heard Jiang Pingji's words, they were momentarily stunned. They did not know when their lord and the Zhangs had discord. Others had yet to react, but Liyun felt that the Zhang's name sounded very familiar. After thinking about it carefully, his mind flashed. He finally remembered when the feud had started. This Zhang's name seems somewhat familiar. Could it be the Zhangs who forced my wife to become a widow and almost caused her to lose her life? Liyun remembered that the Zhang's family was Shangguan Wan's ex-husband's family. After the feud started, could it be that they still bear a grudge? Unless it was a subsect, it was a single entity. If Huang Song wanted to use the people of the Lu clan as a political bargaining chip, Jiang Pingji's side would be very passive, and her hands and feet would be tied in battle. Faced with such a predicament, Jiang Pingji had to come up with a solution as soon as possible. This matter is indeed difficult to deal with. It's better to do it sooner rather than later. Do you have any good ideas? Jiang Pingji knitted her brows tightly, seemingly distressed. She asked the people sitting below. Hejin County was the main route between Wanzhou, Cangzhou and Haozhou. Whoever occupied this place first would have the advantage of dispatching troops. Huang Song had taken over Hejin County and encircled the Lu clan. He had the upper hand right from the start. Jiang Pingji could only deal with it passively. Everything had to be dealt with one by one. Jiang Pingji planned to deal with the Lu clan's matter first. Although Hejin County was important, it was not impossible to take it back. Huang Song was probably also observing her reaction, using it to determine what his next move would be. The general's thoughts were relatively simple. Regardless of whether it was Huang Song or Lu Song, the clan that dared to imprison the lord would be punished in 4 words. F***ck them up. It was simple, crude and straightforward. However, this method was obviously not feasible. Or rather, this was not the method that Jiang Pingji had in mind. The audience in the streaming room had followed the streaming room for so many years. They had some understanding of Jiang Pingji's character. To use the words of many years ago to mock Jiang Pingji, she was a profiteer and strategist who had been held back by her profession. Even though her schemes were not as thorough and perfect as other strategists, no one could compare to her in terms of the overall situation. Didn't you see that there were often strategists who asked her, "What is the Lord's intention?" Lao Ciji Lianming, betting on the spicy sticks that we have stocked up for the new year at home, the streamer must have a certain B***th in her heart. Walking Shueba, my head hurts. Every time I watch the streaming room I have the thrill of being crushed in my IQ. Zhang Xiaoxiao's wife, let's start the game. Let's bet on what the streamer is up to. The person who guesses correctly can split the spicy sticks that Lao Ciji Lianming has stocked up for the new year. The opportunity cannot be missed. Don't miss it. It's a once-in-a-year opportunity. Jiang Pingji's train of thought was well known to be unique and beautiful. The idle people were not top-notch strategists, so they could not figure out her thoughts. Many idle people simply chose to ask for help outside the game. They stared at the faces of the strategists, trying to see the correct answer from their faces. After staring for a while, many idle people wailed in the bullet screen. Qingchen, it's over. Boss Wen Zheng and the others looked troubled. This question is definitely beyond the syllabus. Xinhue, underscore smiley-faced, angle, underscore this question is so difficult. Can the streamer give us some hints? Tangerine soft candy, if I were a member of the overtime team, I would definitely curse in my heart. I feel that the streamer already has an idea, but she refuses to say it directly. Instead, she wants to make it difficult for the big shots to guess a game that they can't guess. Guess your sister. What's there to say that can't be said in front of everyone? Why do you have to keep people guessing? What a waste of time and effort. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed that many leaders had such a bad habit. This made it difficult for the subordinates. At this moment, the idle people noticed that Yang Si, who was sitting in the second row, relaxed his brows. His gaze was deep and complicated. Ziwa Tianyi? My cutie Rong Rong seems to have solved the answer. While the audience in the streaming room chatted, people raised suggestions one after another. However, most of them were not feasible and were rejected by Jiang Pingji. Everyone was in a dilemma. Even C.I. Marin, who was known as the flower of understanding, was frowning. He did not know how to deal with it. Is there no other way? At this moment, Yang Si stepped forward and cupped his hands in front of his chest. He proposed a bad idea that struck everyone present like lightning. He said, I have a plan, but I don't know if I should say it. It's better to eliminate this disaster from the root. Jiang Pingji said, speak. Yang Si said, I think it's better to eliminate this disaster from the root. Jiang Pingji's interest was piqued, but her expression remained calm. She asked in detail, how? My lord was born in the Lu family of Hejin. The rise and fall of honor and disgrace are one with the clan. If the clan prospers, my lord will prosper. If the clan declines, my lord will lose face. Now that the Lu family has encountered this disaster, half of the responsibility lies with my lord. You should step forward to solve this matter and protect the clan. However, the situation in the world is grim. Not only do you have to worry about the clan, but you also have to worry about the people under your rule. You can't act recklessly for your own selfishness. Yang Si spoke in a rhythmic tone. Everyone frowned when they heard him. Their lord had always disliked listening to this nonsense. If she had such a good relationship with the Liu family, why would they not contact each other for so many years? She had never helped any member of the Liu family. Chapter 1247. Everyone was suspicious. Jiang Pingji patiently asked Yang Si, "Does Jing Rong have any wise ideas?" Yang Si changed the topic. "In my opinion, my lord, you might as well bear the pain and form your own clan. Even if you are reluctant, this will not only protect the Liu clan, but it will also prevent Huang Song from harming them. At the same time, it will also prevent my lord from being afraid of the slightest thing." As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Pingji decisively rejected his suggestion. Her tone was a little harsh and her expression was quite decisive. "Yang Jingrong, your suggestion is really heart-wrenching. It's very inappropriate. In this era where the clan was supreme, splitting the clan was the most important thing. Unless they had no other choice, very few people would choose to split the clan. Those who suggested splitting the clan would easily be labeled with a bad reputation. For ordinary gentry, there were many disadvantages to splitting the clan. First was the clan fields. The common land shared by the clan members was divided into more than 10 categories, such as fields for ancestral halls, fields for temples, fields for graves, fields for sacrifices, fields for charity, fields for learning. Every clan member could enjoy the benefits of the fields. It was somewhat similar to the family property that the idle viewers knew. If the clan split, they could not enjoy this part of the benefits. They could only take their private property with them. Second was the clan school. After the clan split, unless there were special circumstances, the people who split were not entitled to free education. It was not easy to study in this era. Learning was a benefit that only a certain class could enjoy. Splitting the clan meant giving up this part of the right. Apart from these two major items, there were many other public benefits. Why were the gentry so united and protected the clan? Because protecting the clan's interests was protecting their own interests. Leaving the clan as a whole, the possibility of an individual developing on his own was almost zero. Therefore, many members of the branch families of the gentry lived in poverty and had no choice but to accept the subsistence aid given by the clan. Even so, they still regarded themselves as a cut above others, because they were born to enjoy the benefits that ordinary people could not enjoy. This was their inherent privilege. Jiang Pingji was not an ordinary person. Splitting the clan would not affect her, but according to the current mainstream thinking, splitting the clan was wrong. Wei Yan was sick. A little Rongrong's suggestion is fine, right? The streamer looks so fierce. I've never seen her so fierce. Tudu Feiqiu, the person above is still too young. The streamer's anger on the surface is definitely not real. When Jiang Pingji is really angry, can ordinary people withstand that aura? Tudu Feiqiu, the streamer and her overtime team have once again broken the bottom line. It was clear that they wanted to kick the Liu family aside and work alone. How did it become the Liu family bearing the pain of splitting the sect? I dare to bet 10 packs of spicy sticks. The streamer's face is very sad, but she is already laughing in her heart. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu? Hee blossoming? It should be the blossoming of 100 flowers. I can wake up laughing in the middle of the night. They are still too young. Facing Jiang Pingji and the overtime team who have no moral integrity and no bottom line, there is only what others can't think of, there is nothing they can't do. Lao Siji Lianming, I finally understand why it was Xiao Rongrong who came out to persuade the streamer to split the sect. Do you remember that when the streamer was fighting the Gaoyue clan in Sangzhou, she once designed a cute panda avatar. She accidentally let it slip in front of Xiao Rongrong that she wanted to use the panda image as a future battle flag or clan emblem. F***CK. She F***King wanted to work alone since then. Even the apprehensive flower Wei Ci could not guess Jiang Pingji's thoughts at that moment. Only Yang Si guessed it correctly. What? This old fellow has seen the answers in the examination papers. Tudu Feiqiu, the person above remembered it very carefully, but I think the streamer probably wanted to work alone from the beginning. If you pay close attention, have you noticed how many times the Liu family has appeared in her streaming for so many years? When she was most short of manpower, she never thought of asking the Liu family for help. She always left them in the lurch. The streamer is really sociopathic. We are far inferior to her. The idle spectators discussed and finally solved the case, finding the answer to the mystery. Jiang Pingji looked helpless. Her face was pale and sad. She was forced to accept the proposal of splitting the sect. Let's split the sect. I can't implicate the whole clan because of me. If the whole clan dies because of me, I won't be able to face my ancestors 100 years later. The news of Jiang Pingji wanting to split the sect spread like wildfire. The outside world had different opinions. Lu Zhao panicked and smashed his teacup. The matter of splitting the sect is very important. Sister, do you need to inform father? Jiang Pingji looked at the greenery outside the window and smiled. Chapter 1248. Split it from my sister? Lu Zhao was shocked as if he was stunned by Jiang Pingji's words. If they split it from Jiang Pingji, wouldn't it be equivalent to her leaving the family with nothing? From an outsider's point of view, Jiang Pingji's father and brothers were still alive, and Lu Zhao was still unmarried. Such a division would be criticized. Jiang Pingji had her own reasons. From her point of view, she did it for the good of Lu Shi and Lu Zhao. She explained, if Bogeo hadn't suddenly attacked Hejin County and imprisoned the Lu clan, I wouldn't have to do this. Splitting the family is a big deal. I'm a female in the clan, so it's not a big deal. My father is the head of the second branch, and you're the only male descendant of the second branch. How can you just split the family? After thinking about it, I decided to split it by myself. If Bogeo knows about this, he won't target the Lu clan anymore. Jiang Pingji mentioned the word female again. According to the current trend, women were born to marry. Although they didn't have to change their names, they had to use their husband's family name in front of them. For example, Qiguan Rang's wife's surname was Wei, and she was addressed as Qiguan Weisher. From this point of view, although Jiang Pingji would leave the family with nothing, it could also be regarded as marrying out in advance. Anyway, she was a woman, and sooner or later women had to marry and become part of someone else's family. It didn't seem to matter much whether Jiang Pingji split the family or not. Jiang Pingji didn't care, but Lu Shi and Lu Zhao were different. My grudge with Bogeo was caused by me. How can I implicate my father in the clan? Moreover, time is of the essence, and I don't have extra time to inform my father. If I specifically inform him to discuss the division, it'll be too late. After thinking about it, it's safer to start with me. Jiang Pingji's words made sense, and Lu Zhao couldn't find a way to refute her. Because Jiang Pingji always considered Lu Shi his father and the Lu clan. There was nothing wrong with her logic. However, Lu Zhao knew very well that the person in front of him wouldn't be so kind. Splitting the family was probably an idea she had been plotting for a long time. Huang Song seemed to be attacking her, but he didn't know that it was a good opportunity to help her succeed. Jiang Pingji saw that Lu Zhao looked worried, and she asked him with a smile. Zhao, are you worried? Lu Zhao said, Elder sister, you're wise and resourceful. Others might think of one step, but you've already taken 100 steps. What's there for me to worry about? Although Jiang Pingji did not treat Lu Zhao as a blood relative, she still included him under her wing and protected him as a younger brother. There are some things that I'm not afraid to tell you. She said, although you like to have fun, you've also read a lot of books. You should know that there's a saying that goes, the tail is bound to be broken, but the tail is too big to fall. The Lu clan was very peaceful now, but that was only for now. How could they maintain their original intentions in the future? For the sake of eradicating future threats and also to protect the Lu clan, there are some powers that they shouldn't touch. The power of power was too great. Anyone in front of it would become unrecognizable. Jiang Pingji did not change because she looked down on it. Among the power in the world, she was only interested in the position of the Marshal of the Federation. She wouldn't change her mind, but Madame Lu might not. Lu Zhao's expression was extremely complicated. In the end, he forced a smile and tried to smooth things over. Sister, you've thought far ahead. I'm ashamed of myself. Others misunderstood that Jiang Pingji was doing this for the good of the Lu family, but Lu Zhao knew very well that it was a preparation for a showdown in the future. Since Lu Zhao didn't have any opinions, the others were even less qualified to express their opinions. Old Master Lu Shi, who was most qualified to voice his opinion, was still enjoying his retirement in Chongzhou. When there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey will be the king. Jiang Pingji had the final say in everything. The matter of the separation of the schools flew out of Wanzhou. All the scholars in the world were shocked, and Huang Song was even more shocked and angry. He flipped over 2 tables in private. She chose to split into schools? Huang Song's eyes widened in shock. After a while he smiled bitterly and said, Lanting's tactics are really surprising. She doesn't want to be at a disadvantage. As soon as Madame Lu fell into my hands, she immediately chose to sever all ties with her. If it was an ordinary branch, the steps would be very complicated. It would require the clan leader and the clan elders to open the ancestral hall and invite out the clan records. There would be a lot of twists and turns. Now that the entire Lu clan had been captured by Huang Song, it was naturally impossible for them to open an ancestral shrine and request for a genealogical record. Extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures. Special circumstances require special treatment. Jiang Pingji's announcement to the world's branches had a similar effect. Huang Song originally wanted to use Madame Lu as a trump card to restrain Jiang Pingji, but he didn't expect her to be so decisive. Cutting a tangled knot with a knife, Master Lanting's temperament is indeed incomparable to that of ordinary people. Qing Jing shook his head when he heard that. It was his idea to seize Hejian County and confine Madame Lu. Everything was going well, but who knew that Jiang Pingji would act irrationally and directly choose to split into schools to draw a clear line? If she were a man, I'm afraid she would be criticized for her actions. Unfortunately, she's a woman. Jiang Pingji had suffered for so many years because of her gender. Finally, she gained an advantage. Huang Song said regretfully, "Now we can't use Madame Lu to restrain her." Qing Jing shook his head and said, "As long as Madame Lu doesn't take the initiative to cause trouble, I'm afraid the Lord can't do anything to them. If Madame Lu wasn't a gentry family, killing them would not be a big deal. At most, it would make Jiang Pingji hate them. However, Madame Lu was a proper gentry family. No gentry family in the world would agree to kill them without a good excuse." Thinking back to the past, when Jiang Pingji reorganized the gentry families in Chongzhou, she also put a lot of *T on them before taking action. Feng Ju asked, "Does the Lu family know about this news?" Qing Jing answered, "Probably not yet, but they will know soon." Madame Lu's people were all imprisoned in the clan land. Their range of activities was restricted, so it was not easy for them to receive news from the outside world. They would only know about Jiang Pingji's division after a while. Feng Ju said, "If Madame Lu knows about this, I wonder how she will react." His seemingly unintentional words fell into the ears of Huang Song and the others, and they had a different interpretation of it. Qing Jing asked, "Huaijie means? To instigate Madame Lu to defect?" Madame Lu isn't as stupid as Madame Zhang. Even if Lu Shi's division leaves, Madame Lu won't fall out with him. They aren't that easy to drive a wedge between them. Feng Ju smiled and shook his head. "There's just one thing I don't understand. Why is Lu Shi and Madame Lu's relationship so bad? Even if they said it was for Madame Lu's good, those words could only deceive ordinary people. How could a truly intelligent person be fooled? Rather than saying that the division was for Madame Lu's safety, it was more like getting rid of Madame Lu's burden." Feng Ju thought that the latter was more likely. Children of gentry families received clan education from a young age. If it wasn't for special circumstances, why wouldn't they side with the clan? It was rare to see someone like Jiang Pingji, who ran away when the situation wasn't good. What was the hidden reason behind it? Feng Ju took it to heart. Chapter 1249. Ever since Hejian County was conquered by Huang Song, the Lus had been living in seclusion. They refused all activities and invitations. Hearing that Jiang Pingji was independent, the Lus were calmer than the outside world. The reason was that Jiang Pingji and the Lus had little contact in the past few years. She didn't ask for help from the family when she was in danger, and she didn't help the family during her glory days. At first, the Lus were a little uncomfortable, but they understood after a while. Jiang Pingji was rich and never thought of giving benefits to the family. They couldn't be thick-skinned and stick to her. A few elders reacted fiercely. They were angry at Jiang Pingji's behavior. The Lus didn't enjoy the benefits Jiang Pingji gave them. Instead, they made the family suffer. Now that they were in trouble, they kicked the family away. "What a heartless woman." A gray-haired elder sneered and said sarcastically, "Like father, like daughter." Lu Shi's parents, Lu Shi, were the same. They guarded against the family like thieves. Lu Shi and his wife didn't use their brains to think. If the Lus didn't support them, how could the second branch take over the entire bamboo paper workshop? Their daughter is also an ungrateful wretch. Although the bamboo paper workshop was built by Gu Min with her dowry, didn't the resources she used come from the family? Gu Min improved the existing rough papermaking technology. The bamboo paper in Hejian became a treasure that the upper-class families fought to purchase. The profits were shocking. They didn't covet a mere papermaking and cooking, but Gu Min monopolized all the profits. It was unsightly. Logically speaking, she should donate some of the profits to the family. Only when the family was strong could they protect the family. How many years has it been? Why are you still bringing it up? Another gray-haired elder frowned. Although it's a bit heartless, Lu Shi did it to protect the whole family. Even if the family is divided, the ancestor is still the same ancestor. Money, power, and status were precious, but compared to one's life was more important. Why can't we bring it up? It's not like you don't know the current situation of the clan. The white-haired elder rolled his eyes, still angry. The assets of a mere second branch is much more than the public property of the clan. The family has nurtured them for so many years, but they don't know how to return the favor. There was a thunderstorm a while ago. The eaves of the ancestral hall have been in disrepair, and the ancestral tablets were almost wet. The family school is not doing well either. My great-grandson said that the food provided by the family school is not tasty. The gray-haired clan elder said, "This is because the clan's harvest is not good. The clan's accounts have been in deficit for years, and the clan leader is also worried." That's true. But if Lu Shi and his daughter can help the clan. Thinking of this, the clan elder became even angrier. The clan raised them, so it was only right that they return the favor. Now one or two of them were ingrates, who wouldn't feel stifled. The situation is stronger than the person. Can you force the father and daughter? The gray-haired elder rolled his eyes. Moreover, it was Lu Shi, not Lu Shi. Both branches of the Shi family were separated from the Lu family. The gray-haired elder rolled his eyes. Besides, it was Lu Shi who separated the family. She is a woman. She has to marry someone. Marry? Won't her assets be taken by others? Do you want her to marry someone from the same clan? Calm down. People will think that the family covets the assets of a woman. That's shameful. Marrying someone with the same surname is against ethics. The gray-haired elder was full of anger. He didn't feel comfortable. The gentry family was glamorous to the outside world. But the resources were limited. It was impossible for every family to live a carefree life. As more and more people were born, there were fewer and fewer things that no one could share. This was one of the reasons why many gentry families were getting worse and worse. The huge population was not a help. Instead, it became a burden that couldn't be gotten rid of. The Lu family was not a first-class family in Hejian County. At most, it was a second-class family. The direct line of descent was still considered well off, but the side branches outside of the 5 kingdoms were very poor, and the clan could only barely help them. Lu Shi was the second branch of the direct descendants. His wealth was more than the family property. How could the other family members not be jealous? If the property was not the private property of Lu Shi and his wife, and Lu Shi was capable, some people might have forced them to confiscate the property. Jiang Pingji was even more powerful. The northern borderline had been hers for a few years. Most of Dongqing's land had been in her pocket. She just needed to wear the imperial robe to rule the world. As long as she was willing, she could reveal her intentions and help the talented people from the Lu family. When one person achieved the Tao, even the dogs and chickens of the Lu family would rise to heaven. But now they had to separate and draw a line. It would be strange if some of the Lu family members felt comfortable. Why wouldn't they help the family members if they were so rich? Jiang Pingji would marry someone in the future. Wouldn't it be better to help the family members than outsiders? Even if they knew it was wrong and shameful, they couldn't accept it emotionally. The two elders talked for a while. Their brows were furrowed with worry. They were worried, but Lu Zhai, the leader of the Lu family and Lu Shi's elder brother, was even more worried. Ever since Jiang Pingji and Huang Song stationed their troops in the north and south of Hejian County and confronted each other, he knew his family was in trouble. He didn't expect the trouble to come so quickly and so urgently. The Zhang family in Hejian betrayed the Lu family, which caught him off guard. "Father, the children in the family are talking about it. Do we really not have to stop it?" Lu Heng, who was about to enter his 30s, frowned, leaving a shallow wrinkle between his brows. If Jiang Pingji was there, she might have lamented that time and tied wait for no man. Lu Heng, who was elegant and funny in the past, was now a mature and steady middle-aged man. How do you explain it? Lu Zhai was worried. Let them be. Lu Zhai was much older than Lu Shi. His hair had been dyed gray. He looked slightly old. If he didn't have a good temperament, he would probably look older. If I don't do anything, my cousin will really break with the family. Lu Heng still liked his cousin very much. But after the incident at the flower festival when she was 12, her personality changed drastically. Not only did she not get close to him, but she also didn't give him gifts during the 4 seasons and 8 festivals. The relationship between the first and second branch had become as thin as plain water. Lu Zhai smiled bitterly. Break up a long time ago. That year, when my second brother went to Hu County, he asked his relatives to move out of the family land. From then on we didn't have any contact. I'm not surprised that Lanting took the opportunity to break up with the family. As he spoke, there was a sound of crutches hitting the ground and many footsteps. What's wrong? You're blaming me now? Chapter 1250. Lu Zhai heard his mother's words and quickly got up to greet her. He humbled himself, but the old lord did not let it go. Lu Zhai had to explain himself. Mother, you are putting me in a difficult position. When have I ever complained about you? Lu Heng also stood up to greet his grandmother. With the help of the father and son, the old lady sat down in the seat of honor. She had lived like a princess for many years. Although she was old, her skin was fair and she looked younger than her actual age. However, her face was slightly mean and her eyes were narrow and sharp. She looked like an old lady who was not easy to get along with. She was Lu Zhai and Lu Shi's mother, the ancestor of the Lu family, and the old lord of Changshu. She was furious when she heard that Jiang Pingji dared to divide the family. She hurried to discuss it with her eldest son. She did not expect to hear the conversation before she entered the door. She was even angrier. I heard that the second branch has an unfilial girl. The old lord was old, but his voice was loud. When he talked about his granddaughter, Jiang Pingji, who he had never met before, his expression became sharper. She is over 20 years old and still hasn't gotten married. Now she wants to divide the family? As the head of the family, why didn't you write a letter to reprimand her? How can you allow a girl to make a scene in front of you? Do you have any rules in your family? Lu Zhai could only smile bitterly. How would the old lord know the influence of the Lu family in the outside world? The ancestors of the Lu family had been glorious for a while, but they had been going downhill for the past 100 years. They were able to hang on to the second-rate position in Hejian mostly because of Lu Shi. Compared to Lu Shi, Jiang Pingji was more powerful. What could the Lu family do to make her obey? Mother, it is not as bad as you think. Lanting separated from the family for the sake of the family. Hejian County is now in Huangsong's hands. Huangsong and Lanting are rivals. If Lanting does not separate from the family and cut ties, Huangsong will use the lives of the Lu family to threaten Lanting. If she separates from the family, Huangsong will have no reason to do anything to the Lu family. This is also the child's filial piety, Lu Zhai said gently. She tried to persuade her mother. Lu Zhai and Lu Shi's mother came from a prominent family in Langya County. She and Gu Min's mother were cousins. Because of her noble birth, the old woman had been willful all her life. She had developed a strong and reckless personality when she was a girl. She always liked to force others to do what she wanted. She lived a free and easy life, but the people around her were almost driven crazy by her. A recent example was Lu Shi and his wife. As soon as Lu Gui finished speaking, the old Feng Jun waved his hand away. Stop saying nice things to that unfilial girl. It's fine to coax an idiot, but what's the use of coaxing me? Although this old woman is old, her mind is not muddled. Lu Shi is clearly unfilial to his elders and heartless to his clan. The old woman's eyes widened, revealing the whites of her eyes. Just looking at her made one shiver in fear. If she says that the sect will be independent, then the sect will be divided. Where will the face of the entire clan be? Gu Min really gave birth to AB****. First, she instigated her man to go against me, and now, she has raised an unfilial daughter that disgraces our clan. The old woman was raised with honor. She also heard that her granddaughter was capable, but she didn't like her. Instead, she hated her. It wasn't that Lu Shi was bad, but it was because of some old scores. The old woman and Gu Min's mother were cousins. They were equally important in the clan. At that time, the atmosphere between the sexes was still very open. It was normal for unmarried girls to have a sweetheart before marriage. When the old woman was young, she liked young and handsome scholars. Occasionally, she would have trysts with them under the moonlight. After all, she was born in a big clan. If her reputation was too bad before marriage, it would affect her marriage, so she was very careful. However, Gu Min's mother, her cousin, was more skillful. During the marriage discussion, she tricked her and let others see her exchanging a token with a scholar. This matter was fatal, but it also affected her status. The marriage discussion went wrong. In the end, Gu Min's mother married into the Langya Gu clan and became the wife of the clan. Everyone envied her, but she married a son of the Lu clan in Hejian County. After marriage, she was not as good as her cousin. She never thought that the daughter of her cousin, Gu Min, would marry her second son, Lu Shi. Every time she saw her daughter-in-law, she felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. She didn't like Gu Min either. In her opinion, Gu Min was the culprit who instigated the separation between her and Lu Shi. After Gu Min got married, she became restless. She started a business and showed her face in public. Her business was big, but she didn't want to give it to her elders. She had been Gu Min's mother-in-law for many years. Every time she asked that woman to set a rule, Gu Min was unwilling. She had never seen such an unfilial woman. When Gu Min passed away, she secretly clapped her hands and cheered. With Gu Min's death, her filial and obedient son would definitely come back. She couldn't bear to see her son dying for Gu Min. She specially found a woman who looked like Gu Min and planned to make her Lu Shi's concubine. Under her secretly instigation and support, the woman stole the inheritance left by Gu Min and bullied the child she left behind. A dead person was dead and a man was a man. Which man would push away a beautiful woman for a dead person? However, things didn't go as he wished. Not only did Lu Shi reject her, but he also changed his temperament. He whipped the woman to death in front of all the servants in the courtyard and skinned her. The old woman heard the news and was so scared that her legs turned to jelly. After that, Lu Shi moved out of the clan land and opened a residence. He didn't even take a step in the door. The old woman almost vomited to death. Whether it was her cousin, Gu Min, or Lu Shi, all three women of the same lineage, none of them could get along with her. The old woman became even angrier when she thought of the trauma and grievances she had suffered all these years. Now Lu Shi wanted to separate from the clan. He must have grown up. Lu Zhai frowned and said unhappily, "Mother, no matter what, Lanting is still your granddaughter." Ever since Lu Zhai and his brothers got married, their mother became more and more domineering and willful. She wanted to control everyone and everything. When their father was still alive, he could still restrain her. After their father was gone, she became more and more lawless. Now she didn't care about the old lord's identity and age. She called her granddaughter B*Ts in front of everyone. Lu Zhai was a gentleman and couldn't stand such filthy words. The old lord said stubbornly, "I don't have such an unfilial granddaughter." Lu Zhai was a grandfather and almost 5 years old, but he still couldn't do anything to his mother. The old lord scolded Lu Zhai. Lu Zhai was already in a bad mood. Faced with his unreasonable mother, he simply retorted, "Mother, the situation is better than the person. Lanting is a duke with millions of strong soldiers, not a granddaughter who listens to your scolding. To put it bluntly, she controls the life and death of our clan. We are meat on the chopping block. We can only accept her independence without any complaints." When the old lord heard this, he suppressed his anger in his heart. Chapter 1251. The sudden change shocked Lu Zhai and his son. It was as if their hearts had skipped a beat. The two hurried over to support the old Fengjun. When the old Fengjun saw their nervous expressions, she couldn't help but reveal a comfortable smile. She knew that as the respected old Fengjun of the entire family, no one dared to anger her or go against her wishes, much less her own son and grandson. As long as she was still in the Lu residence, she was the old Fengjun that everyone respected and respected. Thinking of this, the old Fengjun felt much better. Her soaring blood pressure and anger started to decrease. She shakily reached out to grab her son's hand. She was about to smile and say something, but she was too angry. A mouthful of thick phlegm surged up her throat. It rolled and didn't want to slide down, and she couldn't spit it out. After a while, her ruddy face turned pale, and then from pale to dark purple. The color quickly deepened. Her thin and sharp eyes widened, and the whites of her eyes were frightening. Her change was more serious than Lu Zhai and his son. They were even more afraid. Lu Heng said with a pale face, "Father, grandmother is probably blocked by phlegm." Lu Zhai hurriedly told his son to hurry the doctor. He helped the old Fengjun stand up and patted her back. Because the old Fengjun was having trouble breathing, she let out a heavy and hurried sound like a wild beast. Lu Zhai was so anxious that his eyes turned red. His hands and feet trembled as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. No matter how bad his mother was, the person in front of him was his birth mother. Now that she was in such pain, of course he didn't feel good. Lu Heng didn't care about his appearance. He lifted his clothes and jogged to invite the doctor to the main hall. When he arrived, he found a group of servants standing outside the main hall with their hands raised. Their expressions were sorrowful. Lu Heng's heart skipped a beat. His lips trembled and his legs went weak as he entered the room. The tip of his feet stepped on his clothes and he stumbled forward. The doctor carried a medical box and followed in. He saw Lu Heng almost fall and subconsciously reached out to pull him up. This The doctor was a guest official that Lu Zhai had specially invited to the old Fengjuan's residence. He was in charge of diagnosing and treating the old Fengjun. If the old Fengjun had a headache or fever, he would be in charge of it. He was also the one who understood the old Fengjuan's condition the best. Old Fengjun, this is... Lu Gui hugged the old Fengjun with a pale face. She only came back to her senses when she heard the doctor's voice. Quick, quick, let mother take a look. Lu Zhai urged the doctor. The doctor glanced at the old Fengjuan's appearance and came to a conclusion in his heart. He still went forward to take the old Fengjuan's pulse. The skin he touched was much lower than that of an ordinary person. It was a sensitive time, and the cause of the old Fengjuan's death would cause a huge uproar. Lu Gui raised his hand to wipe away his hot tears. He calmed himself down and instructed Lu Heng word by word. Mother fell into the hands of the bandits in Hejian County, and the people were attacked by the Huang bandits. They were anxious and fearful, and their old illness was triggered. Unfortunately, they passed away. Lu Heng's eyes widened slightly, as if he was seeing his father for the first time. Lu Gui seemed to understand his son's meaning. His lips twitched weakly and he said as if he was crying, "If I don't say that, then should I tell the truth?" Lu Heng instantly understood his father's painstaking efforts. As long as outsiders saw the old Fengjuan's body, they would know that she had died an abnormal death. At such a sensitive time, it was hard to guarantee that no one would make an issue of it. Jiang Pingji was now independent. If someone intentionally misled her, Jiang Pingji would be labeled as unfilial, disobedient, and infuriating grandmother to death. Huang Song would definitely make an issue of it and use this point to attack Jiang Pingji, causing her to lose all standing and reputation. If that was the case, there would be no room for reconciliation between her and Lady Lu. It would be good if she didn't bear a grudge against her. Although Jiang Pingji had become independent, they were still of the same ancestor. If the bones were broken, the tendons were still connected. If they helped Huang Song attack Jiang Pingji, what benefits would they get in the end? Of course, if the benefits Huang Song offered were greater than what Jiang Pingji could offer, they could consider switching sides. However, the reality was that helping Huang Song was far inferior to helping Jiang Pingji. To prevent Huang Song's men from making an issue of the old Fengjuan's death, the Lu residents had to be the first to close the coffin and determine the cause of the old Fengjuan's death. Yes, your son will do it now. Countless thoughts flashed through Lu Heng's mind. He didn't dare to delay and immediately dealt with the funeral. The old Fengjun was over 70 years old. In the words of a physician, this age was considered a happy funeral. The residents had already made mental preparations and prepared a coffin and other things. Although the death was sudden, the residence was still in order. The cause of the old Fengjuan's death was also spread. Chapter 1252. Suddenly hearing that the old lord had passed away, Feng Ju and Qing Jing's thoughts reached a high degree of unity. Take the opportunity to stir up trouble. There was much to be done here. However, Lu Zhai was shrewd. He had long thought of this possibility and concluded the old lord's death in advance. If he had been a step later, the news of an unfilial granddaughter separating from the family and the death of her 70-year-old grandmother would have spread far and wide. Feng Ju sneered. It seems that the Lu family's foothold in Hejian County is not entirely based on luck. Qing Jing put his hands in his sleeves and looked at Feng Ju calmly. After all, they are gentry. It is their nature and instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm. This was considered a crisis public relations. The Lu family's response to this matter was commendable. The corners of Feng Ju's lips curled into a sneer. There was a hint of mockery in his words. With this, the Lu family is completely safe. The old lord was the old lord of the Lu family. She had a special meaning to the entire clan. Her funeral was also the funeral of the entire clan. Huang Song did not want to be criticized by the world and be reviled in the history books. Naturally, he could not let anything happen to the Lu family during the funeral of the old lord. This was a disguised death exemption medallion. Qing Jing's eyelids darkened. He said coldly, "It's just a petty trick." He had done a good job of creating a funeral crisis. He had indirectly attacked Huang Song and protected himself. At the same time, he had expressed his goodwill to Jiang Pingji and helped her find a reason to send troops. After this matter, even if Jiang Pingji did not put the Lu family in an important position, she could not completely leave the Lu family to rot. When Huang Song knew about this, he immediately put on a bitter face. After a long while, he let out a long sigh and instructed his wife, Qi Chaolan, to help him prepare a small memorial gift. Lady Qi asked him, Why do you prepare this? An elder in the family has passed away? Huang Song said, It's not that the elder in the family has passed away. Lanting's grandmother has passed away. As a good friend of Lanting, I am naturally considered a junior of the old lady. According to my friendship with Lanting, the old lady has passed away. It is reasonable for me to be present to mourn. A trace of astonishment flashed in Lady Qi's eyes. At the same time she felt a little helpless and amused. Huang Song and Jiang Pingji's personal friendship was really good, but both of them plotted against each other. Their friendship was too strange. That old lady is the grandmother of the Duke of Lanting. Judging from her age, it should be a joyous funeral. Lady Qi's mind raced and she roughly knew what to prepare. She asked Huang Song hesitantly, At this critical juncture the old madam has passed away. Won't Lang Jun be passive? He also wrote an elegiac oration for the old madam. Of course, this elegiac oration was not written by him. He had asked Nye Sun to write it for him. His literary talent was definitely not inferior to that of a famous Confucian scholar. After the elegiac oration many people were sad and moved. The old madam's daughter and daughter-in-law wept with tears in their eyes. They were so sad that they could not restrain themselves. With this, Huang Song fiercely made a good impression on them and washed away most of the blame he carried. No matter how evil others were, they could not say it out loud. Since Hejin County had fallen, Jiang Pingji had sent troops to the front line. When the news of the old madam's death reached her, Jiang Pingji was stunned for a moment. She had no impression of this cheap grandmother. She rummaged through Lu Shi's memory and barely found some scattered memories in the corner. According to Lu Shi's memory, this grandmother treated people extremely harshly and coldly. She also hated Lu Shi to the core. If there were not people around, she really wanted to reply that it was none of her business. She thought so in her heart, but her face showed a horrified and sorrowful expression. Her body swayed unsteadily. My lord? My condolences, my lord? Jiang Pingji's acting was too exquisite. No one could see any flaws. No matter how they racked their brains, they could not think of a lord who could be so calm even after her grandmother died. Oh, wasn't that her grandmother? But others did not know about this. Jiang Pingji's blood drained. Her eyes were bloodshot and filled with tears. She raised her hand to grab Wei Si's hand and held it tightly. It seemed that she wanted to use it to draw strength that made him feel at ease. Her lips moved a little. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. It was not that Jiang Pingji's acting skills were not good enough. It was just that she had no similar experience and was afraid that her acting would not be realistic. In her previous life, she did not even know who her biological parents were. When she was a few years old, she was sent by her adoptive parents to the Special Military Academy to be trained as a genetic warrior. Jiang Pingji's rationality was perfect, but there were still many gaps in her emotional side. She really could not do it if she was asked to vividly play a filial little girl who had lost her grandmother. With a sudden inspiration, Jiang Pingji used the great technique of pretending to be unconscious that had worked every time. Her fainting scared the hell out of people. Qiguan Rang took advantage of the chaos to secretly take Jiang Pingji's pulse. After confirming her pulse, he released his hand without a trace. Very good, it was not a slippery pulse. Although Qiguan Rang had been looking forward to seeing the young lord's shadow, if the lord was pregnant at this juncture, he would really be in trouble. It was fine as long as she was not pregnant. Jiang Pingji's heart was beating like a drum. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.